Thank you for coming to tonight's school committee meeting. This meeting is being broadcast through local media and local outlets that are present. If anyone wishes for a copy of this, please reach out to the committee or the administration. We'd be happy to give it to you. First on the agenda is the approval of minutes. I'm sure everyone had the chance to look over the minutes. Does anyone have any questions, anything like that? Can I get a motion to accept the minutes from last meeting? Motion by Megan, second by Jim. All in favor? All right. Next on the agenda is announcements, correspondence, and distributions. Anybody have anything they'd like to bring up for announcements, correspondence? Laura?
I went to the Invention Convention at Shining Star yesterday, so I just wanted to update the committee on that. The students worked really well, really hard together to create some wonderful creations out of cardboard boxes and just a few other materials. So the planning and the process that went into the creation was really incredible to see the finished products. It was really amazing. So there was a school bus, a rocket, a race car, an ice cream stand, and it was really, the work done by the students was really wonderful. And it was really great to see our project-based learning in action by some of our youngest and littlest students in the district.
Right.
Kevin,
I think you've got something.
I've got a couple things. First, just kind of an observation today. I had the opportunity to visit classrooms at Woodland Elementary School this morning and wanted to comment on some of the great practices happening in our specialist classes. First, I went to a STEAM class where students were working on robots that would eventually complete a number of complex tasks. And each student was at different phases. They were using iPads and kind of building the robot. So it was great to see them kind of problem solve. And then right next door in the art classroom, students were working on Andy Warhol-inspired pop art, which was pretty cool. And they were using all kinds. It felt like an old Batman and Robin episode because there was words like biff, boom, pow, and kind of put into pop art. So it was kind of neat. And then in the next classroom, students were using keyboards and learning to play Ode to Joy on the keyboard. And every once in a while, you could kind of make out Ode to Joy. But it was fantastic, and all the kids were trying to figure out, the keys and how to connect it, to read the music. It was awesome. But it's just important to see, these are three uniquely engaging activities our students were participating just in a regular day in the Milford Public Schools that I just happened to pop into, and I just wanted to bring the committee's attention to that. The second piece is, we have a great guy behind the cameras who's sitting right behind us. Rob, can you come forward and run the thing at the same time?
Sorry. Do you want me to sit there?
Yeah, just sit up there.
I told him we wouldn't put him on the spot.
Good.
I didn't tell you.
Want me to get back there? Sure, you might be able to do it.
I'm going to say no to that.
Okay. Yeah, you're good.
You want me to do it?
Okay. Actually, RJ.
Yeah, I'll do it home, it's okay.
Hi, how are you?
So we rarely see Rob in front of the camera. He's always behind the camera. And he's actually, it's a really sad day because this is the last school committee meeting he's filming. He's really been, phenomenal to work with over these past 6 years, which I've known Rob. And I'd like to recognize him because I've had the privilege and pleasure to work with him. Rob's done incredible work with Milford TV, and he and the team at MTV are amazing partners for the Milford Public Schools. Rob recently accepted an opportunity on the West Coast, and I'm a little jealous. I used to live out in LA, so I know what you're heading out to, so I'm a little jealous about that. I want to wish him the best of luck in his new endeavor. I have no doubt that he's going to be incredibly successful, and he's done everything from monthly superintendent updates to beginning of the year programming we've done for the schools to highlighting our musicians. Milford TV does a great job covering our athletic programs. They're at every school committee meeting, and they're just anytime I come up with a crazy idea, Rob kind of figures out a way. He said, "Yeah, let's try that." And a lot of times it comes out really, really great, and it's based on nothing that I do, but the hard work of Rob in particular and the whole Milford TV team. So Rob and I have developed a friendship over the years, and I'm really going to miss you, Rob, and I appreciate all that you've done. I don't know if other committee members want to share anything.
Yeah, I just found out today that he was leaving. So again, like you said earlier, it's bittersweet. I wish you nothing but the best of luck. You've done a lot, not just for the schools, but for this community. I've gone out with you some events. We've had some good times together and everything like that. But you've really left your mark in Milford. You might not think that because you're always sitting behind a camera or something. But we as a committee greatly appreciate everything you've done for us, and sucks that you're leaving. Again, I wish you the best of luck, Rob.
Thank you,
You're
thank
really a
you.
great guy.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Yeah, and I'd like to. Well, I'm gonna see you on Friday anyway, but I just, again, from the beginnings, and I've said it over and over again, and even my recent involvement on the board at Milford TV, I cannot, I'd say it all the time, you could take the MTV sign off and put a Bokeep production. That's a pro spot, we all know it, you guys do amazing work, and you are the figurehead for that, so I wanna say thank you for everything you've done for the community, and it's been, my pleasure and privilege to have gotten to know you and to be your friend, and just,
Thank you, Jim. Thanks. And I'll miss you at the gym.
yes, I will miss you desperately.
Anything else?
I mentioned it earlier, and I'll say it again. I can't thank you enough for all the support that you've given the entire school district. You've done so much for us, for the administration, and for our students, and you've been a great role model for a lot of our students as well that have taken an interest in that field and in that career. And really appreciate everything that you and Milford TV have done. So thank you.
Thank you.
You have to say a few things?
Yeah, I would. I'd just like to say thank you to you guys and the entire Milford community. My job here was always a dream job, and it was always fun. And yeah, it can get kind of hectic with the crazy amounts of events that Milford has, and we need to get out there and cover them. But you guys have the really hard job, and everyone who works in the school system has a really hard job. And I want to say some positive things about the school department in Milford, because I think you guys get beat up sometimes, and I think it's unwarranted. But working with you guys has been a pleasure, and I always made an effort to be the one who covered these meetings, because I truly believe it is the most important, not just because it has the biggest budget or the most employees in town, but because...
Don't play the biggest budget thing. We're heading into budget
Sorry,
season.
sorry. It should be bigger. There you go. So I just think what you guys do, ensuring a quality future for kids and adults, they're already doing their own thing. Kids are important, and that's why we do things for the youth center, and why we love the family that we've built, the family atmosphere we built at Milford TV, is because we want people to come in and feel like they're part of the community. So even though you said it could be O'Keefe Productions, it was not O'Keefe Productions. It's Milford TV for a reason. It's Milford's TV station, and I'm passing it down to Liz. She's totally qualified, and she'll do a great job, probably a better job than me. So you guys have done a great job of using the facility, using community television to get your word out to the and I'm trying not to get emotional here. But please keep doing that, because public access needs people to get involved in order for it to survive. And if people don't get involved, it's going to go away. There's some real threats from the FCC out there to cut funding from the cable companies. And people need to realize that cable access is funded by cable companies, not tax money, or we're not taking out of the town's budget. Cable companies have enough money. They're fine giving us money. They're going to survive. So we need to keep using public access. And once they see that it's being used, especially in a community like this, the money will keep coming. So please, reach out to Liz, to Tim, to Mike, to Daniel, to Patrick, all the employees that are still there, and use the resource that we are. Thank you so much for being so supportive. And I'm freaking out because I think the audio's probably not good right now. So I gotta go back.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're gonna miss you. We're definitely
Thank you.
gonna miss you.
What else you got, Joe?
So next, and this is kind of a bittersweet night, because we also have a longtime committee member who will be leaving us. This is Joe Marias' last meeting. And I want to thank Joe for his 6 years of service to the Milford community. During this time, he's been an incredible, and I want to underline incredible, advocate for students and providing additional resources to the budget process of the Milford Public Schools. During his tenure, we completed the Woodland Building Project. rebuilt the technology infrastructure for the district, implemented a one-to-one Chromebook environment in grades 3 through 12, provided additional support such as social workers, adjustment counselors, an SEL director, a number of teachers, and developed a world-class English learner program, and many other accomplishments thanks to Joe's dedication and leadership. I want to thank Joe for his work and support around the budget, which has been invaluable. You've been a real advocate for the students of Milford, and I sincerely appreciate that. Serving on the school committee can be a thankless job. You probably know nothing about that.
Constant praise.
But again, like, I think people don't realize the hours and hours and hours that every member puts in. And Joe, I think you went above and beyond, because you were at events, you're always, texting me or calling me, thinking about an idea or a budget, and it's all appreciated, because I know that it's a completely volunteer job, and it's a critical job. It's a critical role in the community, and we need more advocates like you. So thank you for everything that you do. I really appreciate it. I know the rest of the committee does. I know the community does as well. So thank you.
And we will open it up. Anyone want to say anything? I will say something. Thank you, Joe. 6 years, it's a lot of years to be doing this, and a lot of people don't understand it. This is a part-time job. It can acquire a lot of hours, a lot of time from home, not seeing your kids, and you do it with ease. You always have a smile. You're always happy to do everything you want. I had lunch with you before I became chair this year, and that lunch meant a lot to me. You gave me a lot of good pointers. You told me the ins and outs and how to do things, and just take notes, feel people out, see how things are going, and just do your best. And I can't thank you enough for that hour where you and I just talked and had lunch. I don't think I could do this if it wasn't with all of your help, through the last 5 years that you've helped out. You're a wealth of knowledge, and people just really look up to you on certain things when you do get out into the community, and it's really all about the kids, and you've shown that throughout the course of the years that you've been here. We're gonna miss you. It's gonna be a spot that's gonna be left open, and no one's gonna be able to replace you. So for that, I thank you for everything you've done for me personally, and for this committee. No more other words I can say expressing how grateful I am for all your help that you've done.
Thank you.
That's my 2 cents. Anybody else? Jim?
Oh, you can go, it's fine. Okay. So like Joe, I've known you for about 5 years now, since, or maybe 6, just before I got elected. And I've always been impressed by a lot of the same things that Kevin has just said. Your significant dedication, the commitment that you've shown to our schools. I remember the very first time that I met you, I was sitting at a Stacy's school council meeting, and you were coming to the school council meeting to talk about the Woodland Building Project. And you might have actually carried in one of those cardboard architectural renderings of the school. And I was so impressed that you were a relatively new member at the time, and how much you knew about the MSBA process, what the impact of the school was going to be, the plans for the upcoming work, and you had such a solid grasp on that. And I really feel like seeing you and the way that you presented yourself that night kind of helped to give me the confidence to run for a position on this board. And I thought, if this is the caliber of the people on this board, that is something that I really want to be part of, and I truly thank you for that. So I've had the privilege of serving with you for 5 years. You bring that knowledge, you bring a passion, you are always sharing the important messages about our schools. You represent the committee, you represent parents, you represent the taxpayers with an amazing respect and compassion with everything that you do. And maybe better than everybody, you really understand the role of a school committee member, and you understand where the boundaries lie and where we can really make an impact. I'd probably argue that you know the Department of Ed website better than anyone in this room. You can find every line, every figure, per pupil expenditure. I'm deathly afraid of who's going to know that part as well as you did, and advocate for that as you have been. And you've worked with our local politicians, you've worked with state reps, you've just been out there to really advocate for us and for our students. You've served as a vice chair, you've served as our chair, you've served as chair of subcommittees. There's really nothing that you haven't tackled. And I think that I just wanted to share, it's really been an honor working with you over these past 5 years. You've made me a better member. You've made our community a stronger community. You've made our school stronger. And I truly thank you for that. And you, as Joe said, you will be sorely missed. You really will. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go down, I'm not gonna say anything that hasn't already been said. However, I will say that I am extremely grateful for the time that I've gotten to know you from when I ran for my first election and you were on your second one. The amount of mentoring and knowledge that I was able to instill, actually up to and including this week, have gotten from our relationship has been invaluable. So I first and foremost, it's been my pleasure to have gotten to know you over the 3 years, and I consider you a friend. And the work that you've done obviously goes without saying, but you will be sorely missed, and I will continue to harass you even though you're not going to be around. So thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, just the same, Joe. I mean, your passion is unmatched, and I think you just exude that, not only for the community, but certainly for the schools. And even when I was contemplating running, you know, I reached out to everyone, and you were so forthcoming with information and guidance and really motivating. So thank you for being that person, because I think obviously you've encouraged and helped to direct a lot of us. So thanks for being that to our community.
Thanks for the 6 years that you've dedicated to the Milford Public Schools, and over the last year, especially when I first started on the committee a year ago. Certainly reached out to you and you gave me some insight and mentoring as we move forward. So no, appreciate that. 6 years has been a great commitment to this community. So I think it's appreciated by many.
I'm going to echo what my fellow colleagues have said. It's a long time, and we really appreciate your dedication to the students in Milford, and your impact is definitely felt by all the kids here at Milford and the families and the community. So thank you very much for everything. It's wonderful.
I see Selectman Walsh out there. Would you like to come up and say a few things? Mr. Chairman? Yes, you may.
Good evening, everybody. So, just so everybody knows, this isn't Joe Marias, but Joe is the unsung hero. He works quietly behind the scenes, does, as Dr. McIntyre said, does a phenomenal job. He served his 2 years as my vice chair. He was always there for me, always there. Always when I was missing something, he was the one calling me saying, did you see this? Did you see that? Maybe we should think about this. Joe Marias is the real deal. He's the real deal. And everybody knows that we're taking a little bit of criticism about the Milford Public Schools, and I won't get into it tonight. But I witnessed something 2 weeks ago at the Stacy Middle School that made me so proud. And it makes me proud to have all of you here tonight, because we really do a great job in this district. And it's because of people like Joe Marias that give of their time, and people like all of you that give of your time. As the chairman said, it's a volunteer position. It's a volunteer position. And if you do it right like all of you are doing it right, it takes a lot of time. You go to school plays, you go to concerts, you go to ball games, all those different events. It takes a lot of work. And Joe committed himself. For 6 years, he committed himself. And I understand where he is. It's time for him now to move on. And I understand that. But I just want everybody publicly to know, Joe, you are a great school committee member. You are an excellent vice chairman. You're a very good friend of mine. And I'll be sorry to see you leave the school committee. I wish you would stay. But thank you very, very much, everybody. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Slutsky.
Thanks.
We good?
Can I just
Yeah, sure.
say something? So those of you that know me know how awkward this is for me right now, to say the least. And I'm certainly not as good on my feet as Rob was earlier. So I did prepare just a brief statement here. So I'm very grateful and honored to have been given the opportunity to serve on this committee. Over the past 6 years, I've had the privilege to work with a dedicated group of administrators and volunteers who care deeply about our community and the success of our students. If not for this committee, we may not have crossed paths, and now I'm fortunate to consider many of you some of my good friends. I'm proud of the work that's being done by this committee, our administrators and teachers. The district is made up of caring professionals who are working hard, collaboratively and strategically to prepare our children for success, both in and outside the classroom. As a parent, it's very reassuring to know that our children are in good hands. Our schools provide our students with an incredible amount of opportunities, programs, and experiences in a safe and supportive environment. We've seen firsthand that when students apply themselves and make the most of these opportunities, they're able to achieve their college and career goals. And there will always be room for improvement. In order to meet the diverse needs of our students and help each and every student to reach their potential, we have to continue to invest in teachers, our facilities, programming, and social services. As a community as financially sound as Milford, with the amount of revenue that we generate and state aid that we receive, we should not be spending less than the per pupil state average. We can and have to do better. There will be some opposition, and that voice will be loud and it will be persistent, but does not speak for the majority. As a school committee and respected members of the community, your advocacy for our students is critical. You have the support of thousands of Milford families who look for you for leadership. Lean on them for support and continue to partner with other town boards and departments in a productive way to secure the necessary funding. The Milford community has always been very supportive of our schools, and I'm proud to call this home, and I'm confident the community will continue to support our students. And if I can be of any help as we move forward, just please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Joe, we have a little gift for you as well.
No. Is that a pop socket? Is there a pop? Please tell me it's a pop socket.
It's a pop. It is not a phone.
Because Kevin would have put a pop socket in that bag. Great.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Chairman, I have another announcement.
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, I didn't get a chance to say it, so thank both of you. Both of you are just true gentlemen and always treated me with respect and have helped me in a lot of different ways that hopefully someday I'll tell you about, but not on camera. But thank you guys for everything that you did for me. Second announcement I have, it was a very exciting moment, I guess, yesterday at Stacy Middle School. We always talk about this idea of transfer, right? Can students take what they know in class and can they transfer it into a real life situation? Yesterday, there was a student that was choking in the cafeteria, and a teacher saw it from across the way and started to run over, but before the teacher could get there, the student next to them stood up without hesitation, gave the student the Heimlich maneuver, and whatever the student was choking on came right up. And we asked the student later, "Hey, that was awesome. How did that happen? Tell us, where'd you learn that?" And he said, "I learned it from my health teacher, Mrs. Sally," which I think is just a tremendous compliment to the teacher and for the student for, in an emergency situation, jumping right up, trusting what he had learned and springing right to action. So I just thought I should share that with everyone.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Anybody else announcements? Correspondence? Actually, one other thing, not to overcast anything. We had a great showing of community support on Monday night for the long range planning that we're doing. I want to thank you, everyone that came out to that meeting. I know some of those meetings can be boring, and it's a lot of information in a short amount of time. And there was a lot of good questions, and I'm glad that everyone came out to support what we're trying to do and got a little bit more familiar with what us as a committee is trying to move forward in with our schools and our facilities. So again, thank you for everyone that came out. All right. Moving along to next agenda item is invitation to speak. Last one, brother. Come on up. Come on up.
Good evening. First of all, I apologize. I'm dressed down a little bit in sweats. I was just coming from a scrimmage. But I thought I'd start now from the student point of view for both of these guys. Also, First with Mr. Marias, I've gotten to know you over the past like 3 years. You know, like everybody else has said, from the student point of view, I can't thank you enough for the work that you've done on this committee. I've seen it firsthand through my dad and through everybody else. As a student, I definitely appreciate all the hard work and dedication you put towards this committee and what you put your best foot forward for this school district, and I can't thank you enough. It really means a lot to me, and I know not a lot of students my age and younger really understand what goes on here, but when they do and they figure it out, they'll realize that what you've done has been very important and very beneficial. So I just want to thank you for that. Really appreciate it. And then Rob behind the camera, it's been super cool to watch myself play football on TV. But Rob, I can't thank you enough for, I've done plenty of things at Milford TV to where nothing but professional is the word that comes to my mind, and the work that you guys do is absolutely phenomenal. I've done it with music, with athletics, with my own student council, with everything, and you know, I'm gonna miss you, especially the times I go to the gym with him. So I want to thank you so much for what you've done for this community, for me as a student. You know, I'll walk down the hallway and there'll be guys watching their games again, watching them back, watching concerts back, watching their plays back, watching everything back. And you know, without you guys at Milford TV and you being the force to do that, you know, we wouldn't have that opportunity. So I just want to thank you very much for, you know, what both of you guys have done for this community and for me individually. It's been nothing but great, and I really appreciate it. So thank both of you. So now that for what I'm here for. Update. Let's see. So I know winter sports came in here 2 weeks ago, right? And did all that update. So we're now into spring sports. So lacrosse, baseball, boys volleyball, girls lacrosse, softball. I already said baseball. Everybody's in full swing. Games start next week. There's been multiple scrimmages throughout. Me personally, you know, boys lacrosse. We just had a scrimmage today, actually, up at the turf. It was a win, I guess. I mean, it was, you know, a controlled scrimmage where varsity went in the first half, JV went in the second. But, you know, we ended up with the higher score on the scoreboard at the end. Very good. I know baseball, you know, they're ready and they're locked and loaded to, you know, play. They had their second scrimmage today, which I'm pretty sure went very well. You know, girls lacrosse is scrimmaging, so everybody's, you know, on the forefront to, you know, start their season. Everybody's looking for a very successful season. You know, baseball and lacrosse, you know, they're trying to get back into the postseason very much, and we both have the teams to do so. Softball is obviously trying, you know, they're going to reload and try for another postseason run. Girls lacrosse are looking to go 500 as well. So, you know, everybody's got their eyes set for the prize to go out and compete and win. So that's, you know, nothing but we can do here. The music department, I'm also in that. We just got back from Disney. Thanks to you wonderful people in front of me for giving us the opportunity to go. Now, personally, that was my first ever, you know, travel experience ever. Thanks, Dad, for letting me go. It was an absolutely fantastic experience. We brought our string orchestra, our combined concert band, and our combined choir. And the way it works down there is you get rated on a scale nationally. So you go, you perform in front of judges, you get adjudicated. It's a new word to me. And it's on a rating of superior, excellent, fair, and like needs improvement. And nobody didn't score not in the top two. So chorus got a superior rating, which is very good. That's like the top 1% in the competition, something like that. And then concert, band, and string orchestra both got an excellent rating, which is, you know, so we both got top two. And I don't think there's ever been a festival that we haven't gone to as a department where we haven't gotten either one of those two ratings. So very successful, you know, program, and, you know, can't do it without you guys letting us be able to go down there. So it was successful. It was also fun to go on my first roller coaster. And so, you know, Mount Everest, I wouldn't suggest that being your first one if you ever go down there. So, you know, backwards drop and it's dark. What else? The play also just finished. The play, You're in Town. I don't know if somebody talked about that last time, but I'm going to talk about it right now. The play was very successful. I went and saw it personally. I thought it was their best play that they've done that I've ever seen. I thought it was great. The music was great. The kids loved it. They had a great 3 nights of showing. And, you know, here we are. This is my last one of these, so I'm done. If you got any questions, let me know, but that's it for me.
Any questions for this one, David?
No, I think I'm good.
Yeah, you see me enough.
Sounds like you've got a good handle on it all.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you. And you will be sorely missed as well.
No,
Good
not
luck
as,
in whatever it is you do. these
not
days.
as much, but thank you for listening to me these past, what has it been, like, 5 months or whatever, the 4 times I've done this, talk your ears off. But so that's it from me. If nobody's got any questions, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, thanks, Josh.
Appreciate it, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What, last one? That's it.
Thank you, Josh. Next on the agenda is Milford Public Schools Policy Second Reading. One is the school committee operational goals. I'm assuming nothing's changed since the first reading that we had. So can I get a motion to accept the school committee operational goals? Motion by Jim, second by Chris. All in favor?
And Mr. Chairman, just for the committee's benefit and the public's benefit, those are posted to the school committee webpage as well if people are interested in taking a look at
Awesome.
those.
Thank you, Megan. Next for school, I'm sorry, excuse me, school policy for second reading is indirect cost allocation agreement. I'm assuming nothing has changed since, and can I get a motion to accept the indirect cost allocation agreement? Motion by Megan, second by Chris. All in favor? Thank you, guys. I am going to do a little rearrangement here. I'd like to go to report of superintendent of schools for career readiness.
Excellent.
Kevin?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. If I could have Paul Linsky and Josh Otland, please proceed up. Yeah, sure. Sure. So not everybody knows Paul Linsky, but he's the former executive director of the Blackstone Valley Education Foundation, and we've had a great partnership with Blackstone Valley Education Foundation. We work on a number of projects related to college and career readiness, and Paul has since retired from that post, and we have asked him to come on board as a consultant part-time and help us develop some relationships. Oh boy. We haven't lost anybody yet here, Paul. Help us develop some relationships with a number of organizations, kind of statewide and regionally, that we're hopefully going to connect to our high school programming directly related to kind of career readiness. I'm going to have both Paul and Josh kind of talk about this a little bit tonight. So,
Kick it off. Me?
yeah, why don't you kick it off, Paul, and then Josh can jump in at any point.
All right, sure. Let me walk you through what I just passed out. Quick agenda I'm going to run through in a relatively quick fashion, but please interrupt at any point with any questions or certainly as we go through it. I've got a short biographic sheet just so you know a little bit more about me and I can save time and not go through most of it. And then just coincidentally, a great article this week from one of the new partners that we're working with here in Milford that was published in the Telegram, and I picked it up on LinkedIn, which will give a little more background on everything we're doing here. Most of my background has been college admissions financial aid. I worked for MIFA for a number of years. I ran the statewide high school program, did presentations in probably 250, 300 high schools around Massachusetts. The last 7 years was the executive director, as Kevin mentioned, of Blackstone Valley Education Foundation. We had 16 school districts as dues-paying members. Our job was to connect the schools, like Milford, with business and industry in order to educate teachers, educate counselors, and basically help prepare students for future careers. Worked with Jim on a number of occasions, worked with Laura as one of our great regulars as far as everything we've done in the background. So when Kevin brought me on to start this program, we decided to focus first on manufacturing. Josh had done a lot of background work already, and what we're, Josh will obviously address the goals and everything of the program. I'm just going to give you a little bit of broad picture so that you have an understanding of what it means if Milford High School pursues this within the manufacturing, advanced manufacturing sector for students. First of all, this is a very high priority for the Baker-Polito administration. So we've got a huge amount of support at the state level. When I say high priority, I mean maybe their biggest priority. Many of you are probably aware they combined a super cabinet with 3 secretaries, education, housing and economic development, and labor and workforce development.
in order to help develop the workforce. They've targeted school systems. We're very much at the cutting edge. There are significant amounts of grant money already being made available, and a lot more in the pipeline that we're already aware of. So the timing is perfect. We're hoping to be ahead of most schools as to how we can jump into this process. There are a number of common myths about manufacturing that we're all dealing with as barriers right now. I mean, the thought process of parents is that this is, the old school, the sweatshop, and we couldn't be further from the truth. The partnerships we've built over the last number of years with the manufacturers locally, they're looking for two different types of feeders. One are those students coming directly out of high school and wanting to enter the workforce because they're not going to pursue post-secondary education on a full-time basis. The second is obviously the preparation following baccalaureate degrees or advanced degrees, and then returning to the area, specifically in fields like engineering, chemical engineering, and technology. So very much both are basically of equal interest to the manufacturers. So we're kind of talking about a two-tier preparation as to how we can work with the manufacturers in order to identify students and develop potential workers from the schools here. The skills gap you've all heard a lot about, but let me explain just a little bit of detail about the specifics here. In the greater region where we are, South Central Massachusetts, the problem is you've got a huge amount of attrition due to age coming within the next 10 to 12 years. So this is easy to project, this kind of demographic. They have no way of filling that right now. I'll talk briefly about how we're going to position this a little bit differently than someone coming out of a vocational technical school such as Blackstone Valley or Tri-County or whatever. But this is such a concern that it has gone in the past from something that would be nice to do to a vital, critical need for the manufacturers. Gone are the days where I was approaching the businesses saying, can you help us with the schools? When I go into a business now, it's here's how the schools can help you. And it's a whole different approach, but that's the dynamics of the relationship that we're going to be entering into with many of these manufacturers. I helped get the program started with Waters Corporation, which is someone I had cultivated a relationship with. Identifying students who are of high motivation quality is important. They did a really nice job here in picking the first intern. Waters was so blown away by the success of that person, they increased it to 3 last year. The hope is to go to 6 in the coming year. So getting in the door, relationship building, obviously has to have mutual benefit. It's got to be good for the business, it's got to be good for the person participating in it. STEM aptitude and hands-on type skills are both critical. Common sense. All the machines, everything these people will be doing right now is programming, coding, the entire process. I mean, what they have to do is incredible if you get into some of these facilities and see them. There are differences. When you're talking Waters, where we had, where we have very good relationships, if you're talking, Dell, EMC, obviously where Jim works, it's a whole different ball game. Dell doesn't hire entry level. They have manpower on site, and you go work for manpower for 6 months. They identify those, and then Dell is the option of taking them over. Waters traditionally will hire mostly from their college internship program or someone with advanced standing in the workforce already, maybe at a competitor. Most of the smaller manufacturers in the area, it's the complete opposite. I mean, people who are going to be working on the machines and doing the programming, you're not driving an hour from Boston to work at Precision Engineering or Lampin Corporation in Uxbridge. You may be driving an hour from Boston or the North Shore to work at Dell or to work at Waters in a higher level position. So these these smaller manufacturers, even though they have international clients, all of them, they're drawing their workforce from 20 minutes away. So their workers have gone to these schools locally, their workers' kids are in these schools locally. They've got a strong commitment to try to identify schools that are willing to work with them and to build a relationship, because it makes them look good, not just in the community, but very much for their workforce. So again, I'm just trying to give you the dynamics of how things are falling into place with all of this. Unquestionably, the thing they ask for the most are soft skills. It's not even close. Technology and hands-on experience isn't even a close second and third. It's soft skills. They can train them as long as they're trainable, as long as they can work on a team, as long as they can analyze issues and make recommendations, as long as they can communicate. Let me give you a small example. I was with the CEO from one of the small engineering manufacturers in Uxbridge, and we were sitting in the room, we were talking about the soft skills and everything else, and one of the workers got paged. And she stopped the conversation. She said, "Did you just hear that page?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "He's been waiting for that call." That's one of our clients in China. They've got an issue with one of the parts that we're working on, and they're trying to resolve it. The machinist, she told me, is going to speak to the client. That's a whole different relationship. Very much like school districts, the manufacturers locally have remained competitive because of their leanness. They've cut out middle management. So you've got the workers who are now doing the direct contact, not just with the customer, but actually building the product. So the soft skills are critical here in this whole process. Josh, I think will address it. He's already got plans in place for how to use your 2 fixed periods you set up in the new schedule next year to help develop some of the soft skills. We've already met with people who are going to be working with Josh on doing some of the presentations for the students, but we can't overestimate how critical that is in this entire process. To position this, as I mentioned, I'm using the concept because this is how we attracted the Baker administration, actually, with this metaphor, more or less. I'm using the concept of ROTC. Everyone knows what that is. When the military needed more officers, they didn't build more West Points and Annapolises. That wasn't practical. What they did is they went to the comprehensive colleges, like we are now doing with the comprehensive high schools. And they created a program that would not produce a graduate as well trained as someone coming out of West Point, but would clearly produce a graduate much better trained and positioned for the military, or in this case the workforce, than someone who's coming out of a similar college somewhere that wasn't in the ROTC program. So we're trying to position something here that the graduate won't compete with someone coming out of BVT in manufacturing. They will more than compete with someone coming out of Franklin High School or Millbury High School or Hopkinton High School, because of the background they're going to have, the experience they're going to get, and hopefully the credentials we're going to be able, or at least a credential at this stage, that we'll be able to present to them. So that conceptually is how we're trying to position this. The 2 new partners that we've connected with, because I had past relationships with them, is Mass Hire. Mass Hire had been the Central Massachusetts Workforce Investment Board until they restructured everything about 6-8 months ago, and they just changed the name. But that's basically what they were. They had a facility here in Webster, in Milford, that they closed about 1.5 years ago, Workforce Central, which they consolidated back to Worcester and Southbridge. So you're familiar with who they are. They're very familiar, obviously, with Milford High School because of the things we did with them in the past. So their executive director, Jeff Turgeon, came down. We started the process. Ethan, who does a lot of their grants, came down. Again, we talked about, and when I introduced, Kevin and Josh, I sincerely meant this. I told them, and I told the people from MEP, I'll discuss briefly, that you've got 2 administrators here who were so bought into this and so into innovation and creativity that this is not going to be your typical high school for them to work with. This is going to be something that's going to make them look good. They're going to have a showpiece school here, and I sincerely believe that because of the commitment of Kevin and Josh. So we'll be working with Mass Hire. We'll be working with the Massachusetts Manufacturing Extension Partnership. They go by MEP. There's an MEP in all 50 states. A third of their funding is federal, a third of their funding is state, a third of their funding they produce on their own, generate revenue. Their job is to train the manufacturing workforce in Massachusetts. So they have been working with manufacturers for decades. Now they're getting into the schools. Same reason, pipeline. So we're in at the cutting edge with them. We presented in this room, it was last week, I think, Josh, wasn't it? Yeah, last week. The person who is building their website statewide right now, where they are pulling all their manufacturing partners for schools, so the schools can tap in and see, what does this manufacturer do with schools? Will it be job shadowing? Will it be tours? Will it be part-time jobs? Are they willing to take interns? So it's going to be a whole statewide database. We've already got multiple contacts within, you identify, was it like 10 minutes of here or something on their map? Multiple manufacturers already participating in the program. So we think we got a real jump on everyone. So I'll stop there, but that's just framing the background of, and avoiding a lot of the details of what we're talking about and where we're trying to go with this. But
Paul, can you talk about kind of the Waters internship just a little bit, just so the committee has a sense of kind of how that's developed over the last couple of years?
Yes, they put together an entire curriculum for the summer for your students. They had never done this. In fact, the first conversation I had with them was, we don't do high schools. I mean, I'm basically being blunt, but that's what it all came down to. They had close working relationships with Purdue, with Northeastern, and there was one other university, and high schools was off the table. But the more we talked, the more it kind of intrigued them. They did not want entry level. They wanted someone who was thinking STEM careers, going to be going to a relatively highly competitive, you may say, college or university, someone from the top part of the class, and someone that they could cultivate over the summers to potentially bring back and continue to offer them employment during the summer, and hopefully, down the road, I mean, whether or not they hire them or not, but they would at least be a very, very well-trained student. So it caught them by surprise as to how beneficial it was. When you put together a whole program like this just for a high school, just for Milford High School, then the 3 more interns the following year, it generates a lot of enthusiasm within Waters, because they've never done this. So with building the curriculum, who should they see? What should they do? What are we looking for? They're very enthusiastic about it. In fact, we actually had Workforce Investment Board present them with an award. I don't know if I told you this last year, because of the innovative work they're doing. Yes, so we did an award presentation up in Worcester. Actually, Worcester Technical High School hosted it. Yeah, which Waters was pleased about it. So they're thrilled with the relationship. Absolutely thrilled.
Great.
Any questions?
A few questions.
Yes, a few.
Thank you for the presentation. That's great.
Thanks.
I'm a mechanical engineer when I'm not on the school committee, so certainly understand the need for the manufacturing out there. I certainly work with numerous contract manufacturers, so I guess that's kind of what I was thinking. How's your outreach work with various companies? Are the companies coming to you, or are you going out to the companies? How's this relationship work back and forth?
The relationship that I'm coming from, or the relationship we're starting to build?
It's starting to build. So as I guess we're trying, I'm assuming we're going to, right now you've got this relationship with Waters and Dell EMC. Can you speak to how the outreach is to grow other companies being invested in this program?
I think Josh will better address this than I will, but just roughly speaking, I think we're trying to pull as much together as we can here, so that when we start approaching the businesses where we've got relationships, we've got a very specific program and a very specific need that we're asking about. But
sure, I would add, I think there's a number of assets that Paul brings to the table for the Milford Public Schools, but one of those assets is his sort of deep web of pre-existing relationships from his work at the Blackstone Valley Education Foundation. So as we are working to develop partnerships with local firms to create opportunities for our students, I'm not cold calling folks. Paul Linsky's able to introduce me to executives at numerous local corporations that he has a long-standing relationship with, and I think that our work with Paul is going to really help to accelerate the speed at which we're able to develop partnerships with local firms, and we're really thankful to have him on board for that reason.
Great. I guess I don't want to get it too ahead on my questions. And Josh, do you have more to add to this that you may answer my questions as you go along or not? Again, I don't want to go out of turn here.
No,
so,
please,
all right. I guess, so are we looking for more relationships with other, like a contract manufacturer who would have a multitude of various products that they're going to build, so that way students are introduced to not necessarily just one facet of manufacturing, but multiple facets of various products too?
Sure. I think we're interested in developing partnerships with local corporations for a couple of different reasons. So one of which that I think you're speaking to, if I'm understanding you correctly, is with regards to career exploration, right?
Yes.
So we want to help our young adults develop a much broader and deeper understanding of the world of work, the opportunities available in the world of work. I think most importantly, the opportunities available in this labor market in central Massachusetts, both today and projected in the future. So we're looking for firms that can partner with us in helping to show students just that. So, for example, back in the fall, you and I had the opportunity to go out on manufacturing day, and I had the chance to do that with Jim, last year as well. Megan, you came along as well. That's a one-time year event that's sort of conducted across the nation. We want to create opportunities like that for lots of students on a very frequent basis, where we can take kids out to job sites, and they can really get a sense of what's out there. I think a second way in which we're looking to establish partnerships with corporations is as we're in the process of making this transition to our new schedule that is going to support work-based learning and co-ops and internships. We are hopefully going to have a really strong demand for partnerships with local firms that are willing to work with our students in the way that Waters has. I think it's really important to note a detail about the Waters internships that Paul doesn't mention is that our students are not just paid in those internships, they're paid very well. And that's the type of model that we want to replicate as we go forth and work with other firms. So is that speaking to your question?
It does, yeah. I mean, and I guess speaking towards that model, the relationships, I guess, with the students, so how the connection will be with students in the workforce and also the guidance department too, because I'm assuming it's another piece of the puzzle. So I guess kind of speaking the generic terms of how, from a work environment to the guidance at the school to getting to the student itself.
Right. So last week when we had representatives from the manufacturing extension partnership that Paul was mentioning, that was a training for our guidance counselors and for other staff here in school that are involved in our school to career work with students. So a critical piece of the work that we're trying to do right now is we're trying to get our team here at Milford High School to learn a lot about a lot of things we don't know much about really quickly. And that's a lot of what Paul brings to the table. So Paul was one of the first people that Kevin introduced me to when I started in this job. We met in the summer before I started. I think Kevin was able to quickly recognize that there was areas in which I had good knowledge and there was areas in which I didn't. And I think Kevin was able to recognize that in terms of developing career readiness programs, that this was something I did not have direct experience with, and he knew that Paul was someone who could teach me a lot, and Paul has taught me a tremendous amount. He's introduced me to many people and many organizations that have taught me a tremendous amount, and he's doing that for our staff now. So I think previously in his role at BVEF, he was doing that for our guidance counselors on a periodic basis when they participated in BVEF events, for administrators who went out. But now that we get to work with Paul, more frequently in a deeper way, we're able to sort of extend that learning across the organization. So I think a lot of people on our team have a background similar to mine, where our orientation has really been, traditionally on preparing students for admissions to four-year colleges, right? And that's been, kind of the extent of our kind of like field of vision, and I don't want to I think that's a little bit of an overstatement, but I think there's also some truth to it. And I think Paul's working with, me individually, our leadership team, our guidance staff, and also our curriculum team leaders as well, in trying to help deepen our understanding so that we can bring more opportunities for our students.
Okay. That sounds good.
And Chris, in addition to Waters and Dell, we've also been working in the past with St. Gobain.
Okay.
And they're one of the largest in the world.
Yep.
And they're like 350 years old.
Right.
100 years older than the country. But they're very intrigued about the need to, especially their R&D facility in Northborough. That's a little bit of a trek from here, but given the schedule, it's not out of the question anymore to put someone out there for an extended number of hours that makes it worthwhile. Yeah. So we're hoping we can build a couple of the larger ones, but also the key feeders, especially for those not planning on directly going on to college. For the smaller ones.
And I think it's a great program. Like I said, it's the internship you're creating that skill set that they're going to be able to put on their resume to either transition to a full-time job upon graduation, or to at least have a resume to present to a company after. So I think it's a great thing.
Can I just add one quick thing?
Sure, of course.
MEP has put together what they call the MACWIC curriculum. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
They built it statewide under a contract in order to credential technical high school graduates around the state. Of the 23 technical high schools, I think 21 are participating in it. There are 5 levels. I don't want to get into the detail, but we've got all the information. But there are 5 levels. The first 2 can theoretically be completed by a student graduating in manufacturing from BVT. The next 3 has to be someone with 3 years, 5 years, 7 years on the job, within manufacturing. In the conversations we had here in Josh's office, we're very convinced that given the curriculum you already have in a couple of the courses and the ones that Josh is going to be adding, that we can credential, or students here will have the potential for a level 1 credentialing, probably by junior year.
Excellent.
So again, that's a recognized industry certificate. This will be one of the first comprehensive high schools in the state that's doing this, that they can take with them.
That's great. Yeah.
And just to sort of build on that, to introduce sort of a new acronym to the committee that you're going to hear me speak about more in coming months and years, this notion of an IRC, an industry recognized credential. So right now, I think for perhaps the first time, we're really taking an inventory right now of what are the IRCs that our students presently can earn through our programs, what are opportunities for IRCs that our students probably could earn, but we're not presently sort of have the appropriate arrangements so that we can help students earn those IRCs, and what are some of the other kind of low-hanging fruit out there, like MACWIC credentials, that we can try to develop programs that are going to position students to earn those IRCs. So, MACWIC is one example of an IRC, and we hope that we're going to be significantly expanding sort of our IRC offerings to students in coming years.
Excellent. So how long has this relationship been going on? Has this been going on for months? Or?
So, I met Paul a little less than 2 years ago when I came on the job, but Paul just recently retired from the foundation and has just been working with us for a couple months.
Few months.
Yeah, I've been doing presentations at Milford High School for about 20 years. The auditorium sessions for financial aid for admissions through MIFA.
More from the consulting base to really truly work with our school community is new.
Yep.
And I guess we're going to continue this on, hopefully into next year. I'm assuming, Josh, that's the plan.
Absolutely.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anya?
Just a quick question. So I've had the luxury of working with Alex's business program. So is there a way that we're going to connect some of the streams here between the manufacturing initiative and looking at,
Jim's referring to Alex Dion's high school.
No, sorry, I should have been a lot more specific. So I've because Josh knows. So I have the luxury of working with Alex Dion and his business and banking program. So the concept behind the business program is, Paul, I don't know if you're aware, but we work with a subset of students to develop conceptually a business plan, and then the students have the opportunity to present that product and or service in kind of a competitive Shark Tank environment. But we start out by developing the product idea or the concept all the way through various components of a lot of these tend to be products rather than services. So we look at manufacturing, finance, sales, distribution. We even talk about outsourcing, supply chain, how we're going to handle all of that stuff. And it tends to be a segment by segment approach. Actually, Josh went through it last semester. So I was curious, the manufacturing component would tie nicely into the soft skills associated with what the business program is actually developing, because we, every meeting with that student base is really focused on the soft skills in terms of problem solving and understanding the value chain associated with bringing a product to market. So I was just curious how, or will we be tying the two together, or will they be standalone offerings?
Yeah, so I think right now when it comes to the work that's specifically targeted on manufacturing, so we are we're not at a point right now where we're going to be launching sort of manufacturing specific courses. As Paul mentioned, we think that we may have the opportunity to help students earn the MACWIC credential through some of our existing courses within perhaps either robotics or engineering, maybe some like retooling of those classes. We might get them aligned to the MACWIC standards and prepare our students for the credentialing assessment that they need to complete. But certainly, as we go forward and we are developing more opportunities for students to get sort of exposed to the world of work and to earn IRCs, I think there's going to be a lot of synchronicity between programs that we can try to take advantage of, and figure out ways that we can work with students in a way that's both like really efficient, but also like really rich and multifaceted. And by sort of combining programs together, and where there's sort of natural overlaps is, I think, a really exciting sort of part of the future work that we're going to do.
I think that's a great idea. So we start every initiative with a factory tour. So, we bring all the kids through our Franklin location so that they can see, what the facility looks like and, what the differences are between traditional manufacturing and modular-based assembly. So it's a great foundational block to that. So I hope we can see some cross-pollination moving forward. Thank you.
And Jim, aspirationally, we're looking at kind of partial day and down the road even full day internships for seniors where they're actually making those like real career connections where they could, kind of leverage that connection, kind of like Paul was talking about with Waters, into maybe a position right after high school.
And that's what really, I think we have a lot of conversations regarding targeting students that may or may not be on a college track early on, so that we can get them involved in the program, on the program track early, so that, they have a runway before graduation. So thank you.
Speaking of that target audience, certainly.
No papers.
I guess, is it freshman, sophomore, junior? What is that target? Do you feel that, or is it student dependent?
Yeah, so I think actually Laura and I were having a conversation about this earlier today in terms of the way that we approach career and college advising. I think that it's really, I think it's in the spring of freshman year and in the first part of 10th grade where we need to start having some very sort of focused and pragmatic conversations with students and parents about their academic trajectory and about whether or not that trajectory is aligned to their post-secondary goals. And really trying to help students understand what are some of the opportunities that are probably going to be the best fit for them. We have no interest in closing doors to students and pushing students into, programmatic tracks that we believe are the best fit. We do want to let students and parents know what we know, right? And we want to help them make really informed choices, and we want to make sure that they have choices, right? I think traditionally high schools have presented students with a fairly limited set of choices, and we want to provide our students with the most robust set of options possible and the best information possible so that students and families can make really informed choices about how they can get the most out of their Milford High School education.
First, Josh, I just want to say thank you because it feels like every time you come before us, it's with some sort of innovative idea, and I just love the fact that it's not more of the same. So I love that we're contemplating this. I did have an opportunity to go to that Advanced Manufacturing Day, and you could see the need just in that one opportunity, so I think it's fantastic we're thinking about that. Mr. Linsky, you spoke about the commitment of the Baker administration. Is there funding that supports that, either grants or otherwise, that we're also looking at taking advantage of?
There's an Innovative Technology Pathways grant that was instituted about 2 years ago. 7 grants were given out. I don't hold me to the numbers, but I think they were in the range of $130,000 to $150,000 once approved, to develop curriculum that feeds into basically work-based learning and then into employment. I think that's going to be expanded quite a bit, actually, and DESE is very involved in that, and it's through the Connecting Activities program that DESE runs. They know us real well. We've got some nice connections there, so it depends on where that goes. I don't know what's happening under labor and workforce development, but I had heard that there were going to be additional, tracks of funding there. We do know through when Ethan and Jeff were here from Mass Hire that the state has identified all the Workforce Investment Board regions and charged them with developing a 3-year blueprint to identify which 3 to 5 areas they see the greatest need and skills gap in the coming decade. Each regional office had to do that, present it, have it approved by the secretary. And then they had to do a 6-month plan on how they're going to approach it over the next 3 years, which Worcester has already had approved. We're in the Worcester region here. These are the people we had down here. There's going to be 3 years worth of funding for that. We don't know how much yet, but it's going to be substantial because this is it's a major concentration.
Okay. I have no doubt that these opportunities will be life-changing for some of our students, so
Hopefully.
I look forward to hearing more about your work. Josh, it sounded like you weren't talking yet about expanded sort of program options here. How about the soft skills piece of it? Do we have courses or, those kind of separate blocks? Is that what we think would fulfill that?
Yeah, so Paul sort of referred to this earlier. So as we implement our flex blocks next year, this is going to be an opportunity for us to bring learning experiences to students that we didn't really have a good place to provide earlier. As you've heard me say earlier, flex blocks, rather than having to pull students out of English class or math class or history class to get some sort of enrichment, we're going to have a flex block which allows us to bring enrichment opportunities to students that doesn't come at the cost of their academic programs. So I will actually be meeting with a gentleman tomorrow that Paul introduced me to when we met with the folks from Mass Hire, whose organization specializes in soft skills instruction for students.
Okay.
And we're going to be having a focused conversation tomorrow about ways that we might partner together to bring soft skills instruction to students in a very systematic and deliberate manner, and one that's really developmental over a student's four-year experience.
Great, thanks. Thanks to you both.
So these programs obviously help fill a very important need across our district, especially for those kids that aren't able to go to Blackstone Valley Tech or choose not to go to Blackstone Valley Tech. And we're very fortunate, Paul, to have you on board as a consultant. The experience you have and the network that you've built will ensure that this is rolled out successfully, and have all the confidence in the world in Josh and Kevin as well. So as we move this forward, it sounds like the intent is for the education to occur off-site at different facilities. Is that?
I'd say both on-site and off-site.
Okay.
Yep.
And on-site, is there a need to, from a facilities perspective, to make improvements in order to do this successfully, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I've discussed with the Long Range Education Planning Committee, I think that as we look towards building renovations or reconstruction, I think that we need to do so with a lot of focus on career readiness programming. In terms of the, working within our existing facility, another sort of funding opportunity in response to your question, Megan, is what's called the Capital Skills Grant, which the Baker-Polito administration has also committed significant funds to. And I'm also right now actively in talks with another potential outside funder to bring some resources to bear that would allow us to perhaps retrofit some existing space in a way that we could really improve the opportunities that we can bring to students. So we have been and we will continue to work to figure out how can we get the most out of this space, and to look for outside funding opportunities to try to optimize our teaching spaces here in school. And as we sort of do the long run planning for either a renovated or new construction, as long as I'm here, I'm going to be a strong advocate for making sure that part of that plan includes learning space that's going to help us provide career readiness opportunities for students.
And Joe, if I could, I see it very much as bilateral, and probably like a 3-year program, where the first person we brought in to talk about the MACWIC curriculum, Wendy said that we can test some of your students, and we can learn from the tests where there are shortcomings and where they're strong, so that the curriculum can be tweaked or adjusted in order to make this credentialing go with a higher percentage of pass rate in the future. I see this as very much an eventual advisory board with people who are working with the schools, who are hosting your students, who are advising your curriculum people about tweaks of the curriculum or changes, or how to improve this, how to improve that. I see this as very much relationship building.
Good. That's great.
Simple question. Thank you both for all the information. It's very valuable. My question is, with the number of outside employers that we're going to be working with, and you kind of mentioned curriculum people, I'm just wondering, Josh, is this something that you're exclusively facilitating, or is this something that will land on guidance counselors? So who's facilitating this for students?
Yeah, so right now I'm playing a pretty active role in this work as we try to sort of, particularly next year as we try to transition to a new schedule model and, try to create some internship and, co-op opportunities for students. Cicela Tucker, our associate principal, is also playing a very important role in program development. Rich Johnson, who's our curriculum team leader for the practical arts, is playing a very important role. And our 2 team leaders for guidance, Kate Molinari and Jason Gomini, are also playing a very important role. And I'd say Steve DeVito is also playing an important role. I think you heard Steve and I talk about sort of our Vision Plus program, and work-based learning is going to be really central to that program. So we definitely have a bunch of hands on this right now. I think that as we move down the line, I think if we're able to develop a really robust work-based learning program, there may be a need for us to have someone specialized on staff who's really going to take ownership for that. I think that's a little ways down the line right now.
Okay.
I think sort of at these initial stages, I think it's something that we can handle with our existing team, but we do hope to grow it and grow it significantly.
Right. Yeah, that was the question I was getting at what point will we find a need to have something show up in our budget and planning for that?
Yeah. So it's not something that I included in in this fiscal year's budget request.
Right.
When I made the budget request, it was not clear if we were going to be able to successfully change the schedule. And again, right now we're really in the developmental phases.
Right.
And I think as we come to next fall and preparing my request for the next fiscal year, we'll have to sort of take stock of how far we've been able to travel between now and then, and make a decision at that stage.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thanks.
I think this is a great program, and it just shows the extent that the district is willing to do almost anything we can to better our kids, whether they go to college or not college. So I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the invitation. Good to see some old friends.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Josh.
Have a good night, Paul.
You too, Kevin. Sorry about Syracuse. That was tough.
Yeah. Still an open wound, baby. Still an open wound.
But our magic number's down to 161.
Oh, God.
I take back everything I just said.
Sorry about that.
Josh, you're not going anywhere.
So next on the agenda is an update from Mr. Ollett on cell phone policy, class size, and grade 10 course requirements.
Sure. And Mr. Chairman, if I might, just before I jump into that, I just wanted to briefly say, I know that the meeting's already starting to go long, but I want to recognize Josh Lagore behind us. This is Josh's last time representing our student body here at school committee. Josh was the first student that I met at Milford High School 2 years ago when I came here as a candidate, and Josh and Cassie Probert led me on a tour of the school. He is a shining example of positive student leadership here at Milford High School. We are thrilled that he has accepted an offer to attend Stonehill College next year, where he's going to not only study but play football. We wish him all the very best. And it really is students like Josh that sort of make our student culture what it is. And really appreciate all of his contributions. So thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Okay. Rob, I just wanted to add to what folks said earlier. I hope you'll get a chance to maybe appreciate this in a firsthand way later on. Maybe you already do. Josh talked about the kind of the pleasure that students get from watching the professional videos of themselves performing. He didn't mention like the joy that brings to parents. So you may not recognize this, but you've, I think, done an incredible gift for a lot of parents in this community in providing, professional grade recordings of their students competing and performing that they certainly will treasure for a long, long time. And that's made a really positive impact in a lot of families. So thank you for doing that. And lastly, Joe, I just want to, add one thing to what was said sort of earlier. In the 2 years that I've got to know you, you are a consummate gentleman and public servant. And something you said in a meeting recently, it was a private meeting that made a big impression on me. I'm not sure if you sort of even thought much about it, but it was something that will stay with me, and I hope other folks on the committee. We're having a conversation about a topic that we don't need to get into right now. But you said, this will be unpopular to some people, and we'll take some flack, but it's what we have to do because it's what's right for kids. And I think I haven't been here long enough to see sort of the full arc of your career in school committee, but I'm confident that sort of that principle has been what's guided your work here, and it's certainly it is an inspiration for me, and I thank you for your leadership here and for all the service you've done for this community. So thank you very much. So I have three different pieces of business for the committee this evening. So the first is I'm seeking the committee's support for a mid-year change to an important policy in our handbook regarding cell phones. So you should have received in your packet this evening a document that I've shared with our entire school community in advance of the meeting, our students, our family, and our faculty. I do not want to sort of read it to you. I just want to offer a couple quick introductory remarks and then answer any questions that you might have about this policy. I want to let you know that when I arrived at Milford High School for the start of the 2017-2018 school year, the position that I initially sort of established with my colleagues with regards to cell phones was a somewhat nuanced one. I said, look, we've got Chromebooks going out to all of our ninth graders right now. We've got kids in grades 10, 11, and 12 who don't have Chromebooks. A lot of them, almost all of them, have mobile computers in their pockets. I don't think we should pass that opportunity by. And I said to my colleagues that I want to leave it to you as educators to decide in your classrooms sort of if and when it's appropriate for students to use that technology to improve their learning experiences. And I said to teachers, I can support you in any one of three positions. I said, you can tell students that we're not going to be using devices in the classroom. I said, I can respect that position and I can support you in that position. If you want to say to students at the other end of the continuum, you can use your device in my classroom as a tool for learning. I'll let you decide when you're going to use it, but I want to use it as a tool for learning. I can support you on that position. I said, if you want to take something in the middle and say, listen, there's going to be a time and a place in my classroom when it's okay to use your device for learning, but I'll tell you when that time and place is. I said, I can support you in that. I said, any one of those three positions I can support. I just want you to be consistent with students in the way that you sort of hold them accountable to those expectations. And I asked them to take a progressive approach like we do to sort of, any kind of, minor conduct issue in the classroom. If a student's not meeting your expectations, please give them a warning. If they're still not meeting your expectations, please contact their families and ask for their help. If they're still not meeting the expectations, assign them a classroom consequence, which is an after-school detention. And if the problem persists after that, refer it to an assistant principal and they'll follow up with additional discipline. It became pretty clear to me partway through this school year that approach was not the right fit for Milford High School. And I came to recognize that after sort of taking input from three different directions. The first of which is that I started having a number of my colleagues initiating conversations with me where they were saying, Josh, look, this is kind of out of control. I'm spending inordinate amounts of time in class redirecting students on cell phones, and this is really negatively impacting my ability to teach and my students' ability to learn. I also had a small handful, probably 4 or 5 parents who initiated conversations with me out of the blue. They sought me out to have a conversation. These are people who are not in our classrooms. Based on what they were hearing from their students, and they're saying, look, I think this is a problem that you need to focus on right now. I don't think that this is where it needs to be for learning. And then with my colleagues on the administrative team, we said, look, let's go into classrooms and let's really kind of watch this and sort of, see where device use is at in class. And we were really concerned about what we saw when we went in and made observations. It didn't matter if it was a CP level class or an AP level class, if it was 9th graders, if it was 12th graders. We saw substantial numbers of students who were truly distracted from the task at hand because they were using their device. So in January, at our one of our in-service days, we provided time for our faculty to engage in some dialogue about what we should do about this. And the faculty said to me and to our administrative team unequivocally that they needed our help at the administrative level, that they felt that the challenge was one that was beyond their ability to manage in the classroom, and that they were looking to us as the administrative team to provide them with a level of support. And I hear where they're coming from, and I think it's incumbent upon me and my colleagues on the administrative team to support our colleagues in the classroom in trying to ensure that at the end of the day, our students are getting the learning environment that they need and they deserve. It's a complicated challenge, and I don't want to oversimplify things. But I also don't think that we need to overcomplicate it. It's very clear to me from the year and a half that I've been principal here at Milford High School that we have a wonderful student community that is cooperative, that is courteous, that wants to work with their teachers to get a good education here. And I am confident that in a short time it will be recognized across our school community that we will all be better off if we can sort of reset norms around device use in our classrooms. And so that's what this policy seeks to do. My sincere hope, and I don't think this is realistic, but my sincere hope would be that we would not discipline a single student at Milford High School for using a cell phone in an instance when it's not appropriate to do so. I expect that it will, I've worked in high schools for 19 years, and I expect that we will need to apply some disciplinary consequences in order to reset the norms, and I think that's okay. I think that's part of what it takes to make high schools the place that kids deserve to learn in. And that's really what this is all about. This is about hitting the reset button so that we can make sure that our teachers can focus on teaching and our students can focus on learning. So let me sort of pause there and see if you have any questions or any feedback with regard to this policy. And ultimately what I'm asking for tonight is a vote from the committee to adopt a mid-year change to our handbook policy.
I'll open up. Anybody have any questions for Josh?
I have 2 comments and a question, Josh. First of all, when I think about what can we do to make classes more engaging, this to me is probably at the top of the list. So I think it's fantastic that we would be making a change that we think will help increase that. And it also reminds me, when we went to that Advanced Manufacturing Day last year, I don't recall if it was the CEO or one of the employees, he was giving advice to the high school students, and he said, if I could tell you one piece of advice that you should all do, leave your cell phones in the car, because they're a distraction and you'll be a better employee without them. And I think anything we can do to help our students be better students, we should try to do. Could you talk a little bit about the rollout in terms of communicate? I know there's been a lot of communication with families, but how about to students?
Yep. Yeah, so, all of the written communication that's gone out to families has also gone out to students via their,
Okay.
email accounts. I've had a small number of students who've communicated sort of directly with me about the issue. I've probably had about 15 or 16 students at this stage who've communicated with me. We also have 16 students who serve on our School Improvement Council. We discussed this at our most recent council meeting. We didn't have all 16 students in attendance. We probably had about 10 or 12 students in attendance at the meeting. There was also an evening forum that students were welcome to attend, for better or for worse. So I didn't have any students who attended the forum. My hope would be that if the committee were to approve this change to our handbook policy this evening, during homeroom tomorrow, I would come on the intercom and I would address our student body, and I would speak to them directly about sort of the change that we would like to have go into effect on Monday.
Great, thanks.
I was just curious, so obviously it's going to be very popular. Do you have a concern about an overwhelming amount of disciplinary cases, and what is that going to do to your administrative staff as far as throughput goes?
I think it's difficult for me to offer you a confident estimate of exactly.
Yeah, I'm not looking for percentages. I'm just asking, do you feel like you're staffed to handle a potential?
I think we are prepared for that. But I don't know. I hope I'm not going to eat these words, but I have a lot of confidence in our students.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
But I was a little concerned at the potential around significant disciplinary cases and what it might do to House A and House B on a regular basis.
Yeah. It's something that we've discussed extensively as an administrative team, and again, I have a lot of confidence in our students, and I also feel really strongly right now that my colleagues in the classroom have said really loudly and really clearly that they need our help with this to make sure that our students get the classroom environments that they need and deserve. So.
Yeah.
If it's a big lift, I think so be it. I think there's a lot of things that our administrative team is responsible for, but one of our sort of central responsibilities is to serve our teachers, and they've told me that they need our help on this, and so I think we need to be prepared to step up and help them.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for explaining. I think it's really helpful to hear the history of why we are where we are tonight and why the faculty has asked you for the support. You and I talked a little bit about this the other night, and when I think about these phones, I think about them as an appendage, and it's for these kids, and this is why we have the potential to see maybe some more infractions. I don't think it's only going to be necessarily that kids are trying to be non-compliant. I think it's that these habits are so much a part of their routine. And I think this is a community issue. It's not just a high school teacher issue. It's not just a House A and B issue. It's also a family issue. And so I think that, this little device, and I walk around with this thing and I feel like I'm a babysitter of a $1,000 thing that's with me all the time. And so when I think of our role as parents, so we've provided this to our children and we entrust them with that, and we expect them to follow our rules. And I know when my kids got the phone, I was excited because I thought, great, I have one more thing I can hang over their heads now. But I think, so my point with that is it's a community effort, and it's incumbent upon parents to talk with their children and make sure that they're fully aware of what's happening, what the possible repercussions are. I think it's really important for kids to be reminded of what's the purpose of this, and teachers too. The purpose isn't to send a kid to Saturday detention. The purpose is to increase our ability to focus on teaching and learning. So I think almost unanimously, the comments that I've heard about this are very supportive. I think people are, kind of to Jim's point, worried about the possible consequences. And maybe could you just speak a little bit to what you shared with me the other night about the plans for reminding students? Because on Monday,
Yeah.
they're going to require reminders.
Sure,
And,
yeah.
and probably Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
what will
So,
that
you
look
know,
like?
I think, tomorrow's a good, I'd say a couple things. One is, since we've begun talking about this as a faculty, I know that that's already shifted the way that a lot of my colleagues have been engaging with students around the issue in the classroom. And anecdotally, I've had a number of colleagues tell me that things have already gotten better simply by the school community engaging in this conversation. Not where they need to be, but moving in the right direction. In terms of sort of those, those reminders, tomorrow's, I think, going to be a really important day here at school if the committee supports this change. But I would also add that, a lot of my colleagues have been reminding our students incessantly from the first day of school. I was speaking with we have a math teacher who's on council, who was saying at our council meeting that she thinks that she's probably said, "Please put away your phone" more times this year than anything else that she's said in class. So, in terms of sort of those reminders, I think that our students, understand our hopes and our expectations really clearly. I think we need to change the way that we're responding when those expectations aren't being met, so that we can have the reset that we need. And in terms of, reminding students of the purpose, part of what I hope to address to students tomorrow is, the reason, I can say with a lot of confidence that, the reason that all of my colleagues and I, sort of do what we do is because we feel that it's so important, and it's so important that it's kind of worth going through a potentially difficult process, because our students' education is so important, and our students' wellness is so important, and we, I think we as educators right now feel like our students' education is being compromised, and I don't think that's hyperbole. I think it's the truth. I think students' education is being compromised right now, and I think that students' wellness is being negatively affected as well, and I don't think that's something that we should minimize either.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that it was a handbook policy, but we also have a school committee policy. So do we have to amend that to be consistent with the handbook?
My recommendation would be to vote on the handbook policy tonight, and then we can have the subcommittee look at the broader policy.
Okay.
Anybody else? Chris, Laura, any questions?
Thank you, Josh.
No, Josh, I think this is a great idea. Working in the private sector, and I manage about 20 guys under me, and we have a cell phone policy as well, and these guys are grown men. Not to put men to kids and stuff like that, but it hinders what they do in a manufacturing wise. I'm not getting stuff out the door. We're not doing things that I should be doing. We're not hitting numbers, and we have a policy almost just like this. 1, 2, 3. You kind of, not to say it, but you go out the door. So it's more about just getting focused and getting, like you said, a restart that button and get back into the focus of learning. And what, in the private sector, just getting the job done. So I'm all favor for this. I think it's a great idea. And you've heard it mostly from your teachers and everything, from your colleagues. So it's definitely something that needs to be done, and you're addressing it, I believe, the right way. I think it's a great idea. So I would like to make a motion to accept the change in this, in the cell phone policy, if I can get a second. Seconded by Joe. All in favor? Thank you very much, Josh.
Thank you for your support. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, before we move on, can I just make a request? Kevin, could we maybe just take a look at this across the district? I know there's another policy, but to the extent it's in other schools' handbooks, the more consistent will we be if we train them sort of before they get to MHS? It would be great to sort of have the same expectations across the board.
We can.
Thanks.
So the next topic, I know that I believe there's a request made at a meeting that I did not attend to examine some class size data. So Kevin forwarded that request to me. I've prepared some information for you this evening, so let me pass that around.
Oh, thank you, Josh.
So let me just take a moment to just kind of walk you through how this is organized, give you a chance to digest it, and I'd be happy to, answer any questions that you may have. So there's four segments to this chart. The top segment is showing the average class size per department in classes where there is only one teacher in the room. The second segment is showing average class size per department where there is one teacher in the room and one assistant in the room. The third segment is showing average class size per department when there is one content teacher in the room and one special education teacher in the room. And the fourth segment is showing average class size per department where there is one content teacher in the room and one EL teacher in the room. And EL stands for English Learner Teacher. I'll just make a couple quick comments on this and then, open it up for questions. I think what sort of jumps out is the two places where we have the highest average class size is in our social studies department, in sections where we have a content teacher plus an assistant and a content teacher plus a special education assistant. And I would also sort of draw your attention to the fact that if you look at the third segment of the chart, content teacher plus special education teacher, we've got, I think, average class sizes in English, math, and science that are where they should be. And part of this was made possible by the fact that last year the committee added 2 special education teachers and 1 math teacher to the faculty here at Milford High School, so that we were positioned to offer co-taught classes in the manner in which we want to. So let me just stop there and see if you have sort of any questions or if I can share any other information with you regarding class sizes.
Thank you. I'm the one that brought it up, and certainly that's why I think I saw the content, the content teacher plus special education teacher, and I saw those numbers being high in social studies, so I think that's where I had some concerns. And I guess, certainly I would expect kind of our content teacher only is more of our honors programs, and then obviously it drops down from there. So as we've dropped down this list, the students that are within these classes are going to need more one-on-one classroom teaching in that. So I think that's where I looked at it too, just from that standpoint, and I just want to, I guess, specifically know, are we able to service all these students appropriately? Certainly when you see over 24 kids in a class that has a teacher and also have numerous special education requirements, truly can we speak to that, saying that we're doing justice to these students to be able to learn in a good environment? And as you're speaking to that, on the English and the math within that category, are there pullouts? Is that why you see a little bit less students in there, like you would see in the EL? So is that kind of grouped together at first, and then these students are pulled out, and that's why you see smaller class sizes in EL math and EL science?
Sure. So we have when we see both a content teacher and a special education teacher, I'll refer to that as a co-teaching arrangement. Right? So we have co-taught sections that are both special education only, what we might call a pull-out section, or to use sped lingo, sort of a C grade class, right? So all of our C grade classes are co-taught courses right now, perhaps with the exception of maybe 1 or 2. It might be 100%. I don't want to give you the wrong numbers. We may be at 100%. If not, we're just off 100%. But we also have inclusion classes as well, that are co-taught classes. So certainly it is, I think, when we make decisions around, we know that we can't provide a co-taught structure everywhere. So in deciding, what's the priority? Our C grade classes, or our classes that are strictly special education students, are going to be our top priority. But we're trying to provide as many co-taught sections and inclusion classes as well. One of the problems that we sought to remedy last year, in which we were able to do so with the support of the school committee and the town at large, is that we had special education classes where students were not being taught by content specialists. So say, for example, we're having special education students studying mathematics in a class that was not taught by a licensed math teacher. I felt like that was an urgent sort of gap that needed to be addressed, and thankfully we have been able to address that.
Thank you.
So if you recall, you had put forth a social studies teacher this year
I
that
did.
we actually ended up passing over. I think we prioritized the science position over the social studies position. So if there are concerns from this committee about some of these class sizes, and we may just want to revisit that as part of the budget process as we move forward, and maybe reconsider that decision. So just throwing that out there for the committee to discuss.
Along those lines, Josh, when we talked about the science, you also talked about a number of students that were looking for an elective they weren't even able to get into. Do you have that same issue in social studies as well?
We do.
Okay, thanks.
I would say that social studies plays a very important role in our elective course offerings. And I could, one way I could bring down some class sizes in social study would be to eliminate elective offerings. That would have the consequence of essentially, either pushing up class sizes in other elective areas or potentially leaving students with a directed study on their schedule that they didn't request and for whom it may not be a good fit.
When we take into account student-teacher ratios and you get into a classroom dynamic where you have a teacher and a TA or a teacher and a special education teacher, how does that, do we take into account that with student-teacher ratios? As far as you have two teachers or three teachers in a class? Or do we only gear it towards we have one main teacher with 20 students and then a support?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand your question.
So, all right, so if we look at in group 2, a content teacher plus a BA, TA,
Yep.
Obviously teaching assistant. So say that particular social studies class, we have, on average 24.7 students in
Yep.
there. That 24.7 is obviously based on just a single teacher. So the student-teacher ratio is actually cut in half if you have a teaching assistant in there to 12 students per teacher, right?
I guess that depends on how you're going to calculate student-to-teacher
Right.
ratio and who you're going to count
Yeah.
as a teacher.
Right. And I guess, is that in a particular class like that, like a TA, is a TA assigned to specific students, or is going to be under the direction of the teacher to kind of float through the class?
I'd say sort of the latter.
Yeah.
Teacher assistants are there to work at the direction of the teacher. When it comes to providing for IEP accommodations and modifications, it's the classroom teacher who's responsible for delivering those.
Right.
It's up to the classroom teacher to work collaboratively with the assistant and to provide direction for the assistant so that the teacher can fulfill those responsibilities. So in some instances, it may be the assistant who's working to provide some accommodations. In other instances, it may be that you have an assistant working with students who don't require accommodations, so that the teacher can focus and work directly with students who do require accommodations. Am I answering your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess since social studies is one of the highest, how many social studies teachers do we currently have? Ballpark, we won't hold it to. And
It's 10 or 11, I believe.
10 or 11, so.
Yeah.
If hypothetically, as Joe said, by looking at adding another on, you could certainly reduce your class size. I guess, or hypothetically, if we add another social studies teacher on your staff, what would we see for a reduction in class size?
So it's a little bit difficult for me to give you a projection because I know our overall enrollment is going to increase next year, but it's difficult to say with certainty how much it's going to increase. So my projection is that our overall student enrollment will increase somewhere between 4 to 6% next year. The class of 2023, I believe, is the largest class in the district presently, followed by the class 2024 behind it, which is also an exceptionally large cohort. So we are, we're about to enter into a period of sort of 5 years here at Milford High School, where we're going to have an overall student population that's higher than the norm. So I wouldn't want to sort of make an irresponsible estimate of how much one additional staff member would reduce class size by.
That's fine, yeah.
But I would say this: one staff member teaches the equivalent of 5 full-year classes or 10 semester classes. So we could, that adds significant capacity, to our personnel schedule. In simple terms, if there's 10 members in the department, we add one, we've made a 10% increase in our capacity.
Sure. Our other issue, just to kind of answer that question a little more broadly, district-wide too, Chris, is our enrollment as of March 2019 was 4371, and our typical enrollment is somewhere around like 4180 to 4200, give or take. So we're up about 171 kids to 191 kids overall across the district, and it's something we're gonna have to watch. We're just not seeing the churn out that we typically do this year, and I don't know if it's a one-year aberration or it's a broader trend, because we've had these two big classes for a while. They've moved up from kindergarten, now they're heading into the high school, and the numbers have been a lot lower, and I'm not sure. We've got to look at it over a couple of years before we can really determine if this is just a blip in terms of, our typical kind of comings and goings, or it's a new trend where we're actually increasing enrollment overall.
But should we also, sorry Josh, be thinking about addressing those large incoming classes while we can before it's a problem? I mean, these numbers to me are already fairly high.
Yeah, and we've had them all the way through. I mean, it's been a situation, and one of the things you don't necessarily want to do is hire somebody for 1 or 2 years. And again, smaller class sizes is always, I don't want to kind of feel like I'm arguing against smaller class sizes, but we've kind of taken the approach kind of historically with this group is we've had a little bit of flexibility at the early elementary grades because we've had a swing teacher that we've been able to kind of move around. But we've kind of brought them through, and the class sizes are large, but they're not completely unmanageable. And when they have become unmanageable, like the upper level 8th grade math classes, we've made some pretty specific adjustments.
These numbers are specific to the high school, so knowing
These are the current numbers for the high school, yeah.
Right, so knowing that today we're at close to 25 within social studies, we've got this influx that we've got the 2 largest classes in the district that are going to be coming up into the high school, then you could reasonably expect that these numbers are going to be up around 27, 28 per class with that many kids coming up. And so I know you don't want to make adjustments or hiring decisions just based on the next 2 or 3 years, but if we can look at the teachers that are in place today, and perhaps there's a teacher or two that are going to retire in the next 3 to 4 years, then it might make sense to add that position now, knowing that once this bubble goes through, you can have a retirement that you're not going to need to backfill because you already have someone in place.
And again, I'm never going to argue against more resources. I don't want to be taking that position because I think the finance committee would choke if they heard me saying that. I just worry about making, and we haven't historically made jumps, and we've had these 2 classes in here. I think if the committee is interested in relooking at our proposal, and either adding an additional teacher or looking at the other, positions we've moved forward and making an adjustment, I think that's, well within your purview to do so. My thought is to make the recommendation to add somebody next year when both classes are at the high school. Because it is just from a numbers perspective, it's a smaller department, but I think, and again, they're all within 1 or 2 of each other, but it tends to be, it's a smaller department by 1 or 2 teachers. And again, I don't have the numbers right in front of me.
Yeah,
overall.
So we have 11 teachers in the social studies department.
And how does that compare to the other departments?
Math, we have 14. English, we have 12. Science, we have 11.
Kevin, can you just repeat how many students over, you said we had 100 and something
Yeah,
students?
so for this year, which we're still trying to analyze like where it's coming from, because we have great information on the students coming in. We don't have as good in terms of like when students leave for whatever reason during the year. But our number right now is 40, as of March, and it's probably a little different today, but 4371 when I had the numbers run in early March, which our typical numbers, let me see if I have them right in front of me. I may not. I don't, for the district, but they tend to be around like 4186, 4200, 4150, like in that kind of range over the last like 6 to 7 years. So we're up considerably this year. Knowing that we've had these 2 big classes for the last 6 or 7 years, so it's not those 2 classes that's driving it, because we've had them in the mix for the for a while.
So does that put us off of the NASDAQ projections? Is the number that we're at right now?
They said -3 over the next 10 years, so we're already up
-3.
we're already up about 190.
Okay.
But again, I don't know if that's a long-term trend or it's just,
Okay.
it's hard to say. It's concerning because it's significantly higher than what we typically have. And we have 30, I think, it's either 35 or 25, I forget the number, kids who are waiting to be enrolled this month in the FRC. I was down there yesterday.
Okay.
Just kind of, I check in usually once a month to see kind of how we're doing. And we've got another 25 students potentially coming in. Now that could be offset by students, so it's probably not going to be a net 25 gain. So it's not going to jump us over 4,400 or right around 4,400.
Right.
But students continue to come in, and this year, for whatever reason, we're not seeing the same percentage of students kind of churning out of the district through like move-outs. It's typically what happens,
Okay. Thank you.
which is different than what we've had since I've been here.
Well, yeah, and I think it's really important for us to emphasize that when we have these upcoming meetings. So it's not just wanting to grow programs, it's addressing
And-
the unexpected growth.
And Jen Norjani and I have had a number of conversations about that because again, the percentages are higher than we projected and higher than they have been historically, even though we've seen significant growth,
Right.
even within the Yale population.
Anybody else? Josh, once again, thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Okay. Joe, actually have one more matter of business for the committee.
Oh,
Sorry, Joe.
you do, I'm sorry.
Nice try, Joe.
I crossed it off.
So I have one more handout for
I
you.
apologize.
I'll use the bathroom real quick.
Thank you.
So the last topic I wanted to speak to you about this evening is with regards to some course requirements that we presently have that I'll be seeking to change later in the school year when I bring before you handbook changes. But the end of the school year is actually coming up really fast, and so I wanted to get before you this evening to share a proposal with you to sort of get your initial feedback rather than sort of bringing it to you for the first time at the end of the school year. So. Milford High School presently requires students in 10th grade to take 2 one-quarter classes. One is called Sophomore Seminar, and one is Current Events. And my proposal is that we remove these 2 classes as graduation requirements going forward. So I want to share with you a little bit about the rationale for that and answer any questions you have and also listen to any concerns or feedback that you might have about making changes to these graduation requirements. So, first of all, from a purely instructional standpoint, the content that is taught in both Sophomore Seminar and Current Events is important content that I do not want to eliminate from our students' experience here at school. I do believe, however, that we can meet the educational objectives in both courses through other means. So let me start off by talking about Sophomore Seminar and how I think we can meet those learning objectives through other means, and then I'll talk about Current Events and how we can do that through other means. So Sophomore Seminar is a class that, as you can see here in the description, includes instruction in personal finance, information technology, communication skills, public speaking, resume writing, and career skills. So I don't think anyone would argue that these are topics that we want to exclude from our students' education here at Milford High School. With the implementation of FlexBlock next year, I believe that is going to provide an adequate opportunity for us to provide instructional programs that help students develop these skills over a 4-year period as opposed to a 10-week period in 10th grade. Secondly is that I want to propose that we add as an elective next year a senior seminar class, which instead of being a 10-week class would be a 20-week class. And instead of requiring all seniors to take this class, it would be open as an elective to seniors, but it would be geared particularly to seniors that are looking to make a transition directly to career after graduation, in which there would be a strong emphasis on job search skills, and where the course would actually be designed to help students actually gain employment after high school. So with regards to Current Events, I am of the opinion that Current Events is something that should be integrated into our social studies program throughout all 4 years of the students' education at Milford High School. And so rather than trying to provide Current Events strictly in sort of a 10-week increment in sophomore year. I believe it should be infused throughout our social studies courses, and this is a conversation that I've had with our curriculum team leader for the social studies, Dustin Santamena, and he is in full agreement that we can and should be integrating the study of current events into all of our classes. There are, I see sort of two benefits at the school level and a really important benefit at the student level for eliminating these as graduation requirements. And let me start off with the student level, because that's, I think, at the end of the day, the most important. It's going to create space for students in 10th grade to take one more elective. And I think that the opportunity for students to take electives, particularly earlier in their high school career, is really important for allow students to explore their interests, both academically and career-wise, and to help students stay engaged in school. It's oftentimes elective classes that are the most engaging for our students because it's where they have a choice. They get to pick what they're going to study. And I think that broadening elective offerings for our students is a worthwhile goal. At the school level, scheduling 2 classes at a quarter increment is a nightmare. And it creates significant constraints on our scheduling model that inhibits our ability to achieve other scheduling objectives, like balancing class sizes across sections. Lastly, we are presently offering 11 section of current events. That's the equivalent of 0.6 FTE in our social studies department. So in speaking to the topic that we just discussed, which is overcrowding within social studies classes, by freeing up 0.6 FTE in social studies to teach other courses is going to make a marginal difference in class size for social studies. I think that will pretty much be consumed by the increase in overall enrollment next year, but that's not to minimize the contribution that we would gain by freeing up 0.6 FTE on the social studies side. So again, I'm not looking for a vote this evening. I'll be bringing sort of a number of proposed changes to graduation requirements when I come to you with handbook changes in either May or June. But I did not want to wait until May or June to present this to you for the first time. So, I'd like to answer any questions you might have or listen to any concerns or feedback that you might have about this proposal. Chris?
I'm assuming both the sophomore seminar and the current events, it's not a state mandated, like an English math
There's not.
course, so there's no concerns from that standpoint.
No.
And by rolling it into, the current events into social studies, it kind of is more of a fluid kind of learning environment for talking about current events.
We believe so.
Just one question. With the flex block, would you plan to have some sort of predetermined topics that will be addressed by your assigned flex block teacher?
So I don't see our flex block teachers as being sort of the service providers.
Okay.
I see it being our guidance staff.
Okay.
And in some instances, outside providers as well.
So they would kind of visit into flex block classes?
The staff might be pushing into flex blocks, or we may be pulling
Okay.
kids out of flex block to come to sort of larger spaces for, maybe in 40, 60 students at a pop.
Okay. Great.
Just who know curriculum development around the senior seminar? What type of role?
I'm sorry.
Like curriculum development?
Yeah.
More specifically, like what type of, who would be teaching this?
Yeah, so business teachers who are presently teaching sophomore
Got it.
seminar.
Oh, okay, thanks.
In my initial conversation with 2 of my colleagues who would be teaching this class, they were very enthusiastic about the idea of getting to work with kids for a 20-week period as opposed to a 10-week period, and very enthusiastic about getting to work with kids in their senior year. One of our teachers who teaches sophomore seminar, Alex Dion, and we were having a conversation, and Alex was sharing with me that one of the joys for him of teaching this class is he has had students come to him after having taught the class saying like, hey, like this really mattered, like this was really relevant, and I wish it was in my senior year instead of my sophomore year.
Right.
So when I came in as principal and I learned about sophomore seminar, I was, to be candid, sort of scratching my head a little bit, asking like, why exactly are we doing this in 10th grade as opposed to senior year? Laura and I spoke about this earlier today. It's not to say that, I think the earlier that we can start providing student instructions in these topics, the better, and that's why I think flex block is so important. And that's going to allow sort of a 4-year span in which to do this work. But I think it's most relevant to students in 12th grade. And so when Alex and I talked about it, he was really enthusiastic about not only getting to work with students for 20 weeks instead of 10, but getting to work with students in their senior year, knowing that, for students who particularly who are looking to make a transition to career after school, they will I think, immediately and intuitively recognize the relevance and the utility of this class.
Excellent. Thanks.
Go ahead,
So the only consideration, I do think that there's still value in offering this type of course to kids that are going to college as well. Because one of the main drivers behind that sophomore seminar is feedback that we've been getting from a lot of employers, that kids, they're even going to some of the best colleges out there struggle with basic communication skills and interpersonal skills. And so there's benefits to offering these types of classes. So I don't know if long-term you plan on rolling it out to a broader audience, or?
So I think if we were to find that that flex block were not adequate, turns out to not be adequate for the educational needs of our students, then we're going to be looking for other mechanisms by which to meet our students' needs. I would say that, if we're going to offer a 20-week experience to all seniors, that's not viable within our current staffing level.
And not to get off on a tangent here, but somewhat related to this. So the CPAC event a couple weeks ago on executive functioning, that I thought that presentation was fantastic. Now, obviously, it was geared towards parents and providing parents with some of the skills that they can use at home with their children. But I think from a curriculum perspective, there's skills that we should be teaching in class as well, right? So I don't know if at the middle, because a lot of these skills should be developed at the middle school before they even get to high school, right? Kids need to develop good study skills, they need to develop good communication skills, interpersonal skills, how to be organized. And so are we using the ASC period at Stacy to be able to teach some of those important
I think they're
skills?
definitely doing some of the executive functioning work there. I couldn't break it down in terms of how like what percentage of time they're spending on executive functioning or what they're doing in classrooms. 'Cause I know a number of teachers work on things like note-taking skills, organizing your notebook, things like that. But in terms of do we have like a viable and consistent curriculum to kind of address executive functioning in the middle school? I'd say no. But I think there's a lot of opportunities within classes and within ASC where teachers will work with students on a variety of kind of organizational and executive functioning type skills.
Okay.
I would say with regards to sort of helping students develop those executive functioning skills, to the best of my knowledge, I don't believe that sort of educational research has kind of answered the question as to whether or not these skills are best taught in sort of abstracted from the content in sort of a standalone class, or if it's better taught in an integrated fashion within sort of the subjects. I'd say, in my experience as an educator, I'm skeptical of the value of trying to teach such skills in an isolated, abstracted fashion. I think that the way that we provide the best skills development and executive functioning for students is when we provide that instruction in our content classrooms. Anytime that I think skills are sort of abstracted from content, particularly for adolescents, I'm not sure that they're able to sort of then transfer those skills into the content setting. So I guess I have a prejudice in favor of trying to develop those skills within the content classroom.
Yeah. Which makes a case for smaller class sizes, too.
I won't disagree with you.
Laura?
So Josh and I did meet this morning, or this afternoon rather, about this, because this is kind of what I do. So I'm a little biased because this 10th grade class is basically what I teach. I've been to a number of workshops from DESE, and really the push is the career and college readiness and the advising starting almost in the middle school, 7th grade, and really trying to start it there so that students can really think about, what is their course plan? What do they want to take? What do they want their high school experience to look like? And then even thinking, post-secondary after that. So I just have a few concerns in that if we do put it in the flex box, it's not going to be assessed and it's not going to be, necessarily graded, and where's the accountability, I suppose, for the students and then teachers making sure that they're actually getting the content. So that would be my concern. As far as the senior seminar, I think it's a great opportunity for our students to then, like you said, make real connections, maybe update their resume, actually do real live, job applications, and I like that piece of it. Are we going to be able to offer enough sections for students who may be wanting to take it? Do you know what that would look like?
Yeah, so just to your first concern,
Yeah.
With regards to, sort of losing the assessment and accountability piece, I think that's a very legitimate concern, and I think that there's, there's trade-offs here, right?
Mhm.
And I recognize that, I think that is one of the trade-offs. I think with regards to sectioning, we will be taking a hard look at requests next Tuesday. So this evening, I'm actually not prepared to share with you the number of estimated sections of senior seminar. If that's something that the committee wants an update on, I'd be happy to provide that update at a later date.
Yeah, 'cause I'm just thinking like number-wise, it's a quarter class
Mhm.
in 10th grade. We're going to a 20-week class in the senior
Mhm.
year, so I just don't know if we'll be able to accommodate everybody.
Yeah, so when in its current configuration, we're running approximately 275 students through that class a year. I think it stands to reason that if we're going to drop to add from a 10-week class to a 20-week class, that we're going to lose roughly half the capacity. So I think we're probably going to be able to serve at most somewhere between 120 to 140 students. So again, I'll bring this back to you later in May or June when I come to you with a host of proposed revisions to the handbook. But thank you for everything this evening.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, report of Assistant Superintendent. Mr. Consigli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here today to provide an update on the school start time committee. I'm going to start at the beginning. I know we've been over this several times. I'll try to be quick, but I just want to review for everybody kind of the history over the last, over a year now, of what we've been up to. So we formed a committee made of parents, staff, administrators, approximately 16 people on the original committee. Attendance at monthly meetings has fluctuated up and down. We began last February. We reviewed over 25 research articles, analyzed some tardy and absenteeism data from MHS, investigated the current start times of over 40 local districts. I say local because obviously there aren't 40 abutting towns, but I think we're out 20, 25 miles, if not even a little further. And then surveyed staff, parents, and students. We had over 2,900 respondents to that survey. We had mixed reviews. I think some of the questions we had about our survey was some of the wording on our survey. For example, we listed out some different changes on there. We put some times on there. So as an example, we had 8 o'clock, 8:15, 8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock, and then no change. And I think that people saw no change in some ways and checked no change because who likes change? So I think if we had to do it again, we would put 7:45 instead of no change and see where that kind of fell. The other thing that we felt with our survey is although overwhelmingly people felt like we should be in line with the American Pediatrics Association, I think that they read into some of the questions as they went along. For example, one of the questions said, would you be in favor of flipping the middle school, high school, and elementary school times? And that was basically 2/3 to 1/3 of no. The answer would be no, but I think people interpreted that as that's the direction we were heading and kind of answered questions about the start times in that fashion. So I think if we did the survey over again, we might change some of the wording of questions. We will come back to you with some of the other data. We're still analyzing it. We're fortunate enough to have Dr. Nicole Rosa on our committee, who is a psychologist at Worcester State, who's been working with students here in the statistics class, and then some of our own students, and they've been running them through SSPS, which is a program, and they're trying to make correlations between which groups, parents, students, staff, answered in which ways. So they gave us some preliminary data yesterday, but we're not prepared to share that. All right, some of the other things that we've done, we've had an initial conversation. Well, I've had an initial conversation with Laura O'Callahan, who's the president of the Milford Chamber of Commerce, because we wanted to see from her what the effect would be if we changed the high school start time, because that was one of the concerns that people brought up about students going into the workforce after they get out of school. So we wanted to see when do the businesses need the school, need the students' support. Dr. McIntyre is surveying some area superintendents to see what the level of engagement is in their communities around school start time. We're finding that it's picking up. Most recently, there was a forum I think it was last night or sometime this week, in Franklin, where they were talking about this, and they were talking about, in fact, an 8:45 start time for the high school and 3:15 dismissal. I've had discussions in the past month with Nancy and Josh about school start times and the kind of impact that they felt it would have on students in classrooms, and both agree that, then it's hard to predict the kind of impact it will have. However, both agree that letting kids sleep longer is clearly a better option, as long as you can kind of figure out all of the issues that may come along with it, which I'll get into in a minute. Yesterday, we had the pleasure, I say we, Lisa Burns, Len Marcone, Dr. Perriello, Dr. Rosa, Jim Legore, and myself had the pleasure of going down to Milford TV, and we put together a panel discussion about some of the research that's out there, some of the things that I just talked about, and then just some of the barriers that we think we'd have to overcome if we were to go in this direction. It's about 45 minutes. We felt like instead of having these public forums that we have with minimal attendance, we felt like if we put together something like that, we could break it up into small parts and send it out into different sections, or we can send out the discussion in a full, I think it's about 45 minutes, in the full set, and people can just look at it when they want to look at it. So we did that. And then Len also did a financial and structural analysis of the impact of changes that it would mean for transportation. And with that, I'm coming to you with a recommendation from the committee, and I'm going to recommend two options. Okay, and I think myself and the committee are, although we're going to recommend two options, there's definitely one that I think has more strengths than the other. So, to reiterate, current start times, Milford High School starts at 7:50 and ends at 2:20 for 6.5 hours. Stacy Middle School starts at 7:45 and it ends at 2:13. But let's just say it's 2:15, so 6.5 hours. Woodland 8:25 to 2:40, which is about 6.25. Brookside Memorial is 8:40 to 2:50, which is about 6.2, it's actually 6.17, but close enough. Shining Star could kind of go either way because it just the way the hours are. So the current hours of Shining Star are 8:45 to 11 o'clock, and that's a half day AM obviously, but for the full day 8:45 to 2 o'clock. That would be the full day, 8:45 to. The second session, the afternoon session, doesn't start until 11:45. All right, so option one recommendation. Milford High School and Stacy Middle School start at 8:30 and both dismiss at 3 o'clock. And I remind you, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends a start time for adolescents of 8:30 or later. Woodland would start at 9 o'clock and dismiss at 3:15. Brookside Memorial 9:20 start and would dismiss at 3:30. And again, Shining Star, there's some flexibility with Shining Star. The one concern about starting at 8:45 is you have high school students pulling in for 8:30 and then add to the mix Shining Star parents right around the same time. It might be too close, so you might want to push Shining Star to 9:15 and have them dismiss at 2:30. It gives you the same hours, but it gives you a little bit of flexibility. Or you could keep it the same. Okay, so with those changes, there's zero impact on busing.
When you say busing, you mean cost?
Sorry, yes, financial impact on busing. In order to not, if we were to go to 8:30 with Milford High School and 8:30 with Stacy and keep Woodland, Brookside the same, you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million, $1.5 million of transportation costs. Not to mention, we'd have to find 40 more bus drivers, which I'm not sure we could do. It might not be as much, and the reason why I say it might not be as much is because you'd have to look at things like if you're willing to put middle school and high school students on the same bus as kindergarten students, you might be able to reduce the cost a little bit. I'm not sure that I would sign on for that. But then you also have to consider there's certain roads in the town where you can't fit a bus, you can barely fit one bus down there, and now you're gonna put two buses down there potentially at the same time. And then as far as traffic goes, the buses basically tie up the town, right? So the way it is now, if you consider the amount of buses that are out there, if we double that, I can't imagine what it would do for traffic around town. So Lenny's confident that with this plan, and if you notice, there was a little shift on Woodland. He feels like he can get the buses out and around from Stacy and back to Woodland in time to pick up for dismissal. Where in the original start times, there's a little bit more leeway. I think there's there's about 20 minutes in between, like when Milford High School dismisses and when Woodland. He thinks he can handle the 5 minutes from Woodland at dismissal. Okay, so option two. Option two is the flip, basically. Milford High School, Stacy Middle School start at 8:30, same times. Dismiss at 3. Woodland start at 7:50 and dismiss at 2:05. Brookside Memorial start at 8 o'clock. Dismiss around 2:10, 2:15, somewhere in that area. And then Shining Star you'd have to try to figure that out. Same times though for Shining Star, basically.
9:15.
Yeah, or 8:45. We'd have to just kind of play with that. If you push it, if you push Shining Star to say 8:05. Then there's dismissing their full day at 1:20. So I'm not sure what the value with that is. Okay, so barriers to overcome. Now we're coming to you with the recommendation, and the committee believes that this is the right thing to do. However, we also acknowledge that there are plenty of barriers to overcome, and basically there's three major challenges. First of all, it's an adaptive change for everybody. It's not simply we can just put this out, make this technical change, and everybody's going to be good with it. We realize that the way people run their households is going to change. Traffic in town is going to change just when people are leaving in their houses. It may be for the better. We won't know, I guess, until we ever make a change. Before and after school care is going to change for people. It may be a flip. People may need before school care rather than after school care, or they may need both now. And then implications on parents' work. So they'd have to start making adjustments to either find people to watch their kids on one end or another, which is a little different, or they'd have to make some shifts in work. So those are some of the adaptive changes that people would have to make. The second barrier is athletics, music, and after-school activities. Although this change would affect every student and I personally think it would be a change for the good for every student in the district. We also still have to recognize that there is things that happen after school, and it's important to work with athletic department, music department to try to figure out how we can make it work for those students as well after school. And then the third barrier that we have to overcome is the current contract language. In our Unit A, or our teachers union, there are specific times that are aligned to the way the high school, all the schools work right now. So I think there is language that is also provides opportunity for change in start time, but I also think it's subject to being negotiated, bargaining. So those are the three major barriers that we see that we'd have to overcome. We also would come with this recommendation and say that this is at least a year out, not next year, the year after. So next year is what, 19, 20, 20, 21 would be when we recommend that these changes take place. It gives folks a chance to kind of work through some of these adaptive changes that we talked about. And to be honest with you, it also gives other districts to kind of catch up to maybe where we're at. I see this as, just from some of the things that I'm seeing around us, I see this as something that, over the next 10 years, I think it's going to become kind of the norm, that all districts are kind of moving in this direction based on research, and I think it's going to take some brave districts to move forward with it first and to kind of show the way in order for it to kind of take hold. So I don't know if anybody has questions.
You mentioned that there was a zero cost impact to proposal one. Is there a cost impact to proposal two?
No, but the worry, the worry for option 2, I should have pointed this out, thank you. The reason why we wouldn't recommend option 2 is because high school, middle school gets out at 3 o'clock on both of them, but in option 2, Woodland, Brookside, Memorial get out an hour ahead. So one of the things that we saw in our survey was that people that responded said that it was very important that middle school, high school students get out earlier than elementary students because they have to go pick up their younger siblings. And if I've been fortunate enough to stand outside Memorial and pick up my daughter once in a while, and if you're out there, you see the line of middle school students that are there because they just got dismissed from Stacy, and now they're picking up their younger siblings at Memorial. So we felt like that would be really difficult for people to have elementary kids out an hour earlier. Not to mention that a lot of our high school students work in some of the area daycares and in our after-school programs here.
Craig, did we reach out to any of the teachers on this too, survey-wise?
Yeah, we have 5 or 6 on our committee, but then I also talked with the union, and we surveyed them.
Yep.
And like I said, it's a mixed bag. I think initially a lot of people, when you talk about adaptive changes, there's that initial shock, like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? But then if you give people some time to kind of plan and think it through, I think that in most cases, people can make the change.
Any other communities have done this flip that we're reaching out to and communicating with?
Ashland's at 8:20 right now, so
For
that,
high school?
yeah,
High
that's
school,
just,
middle school?
yeah. And again, I think it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to the superintendent in Ashland, he'll tell you it's the best thing they've ever done. If you talk to, I haven't, but I'm guessing if you talk to the athletic director, not so much.
Did Ashland flip their times, or they just pushed everything back?
You know what? I'm not quite sure about that.
That's fine.
I've had Pete is on our committee, and I've had extensive talks with Pete, and I really think Kevin, I think, is gonna have to go down and work with the Hockomock League and the officials in the league and kind of find out where they're at with scheduling. I think it's gonna come down to either superintendents getting together, or at least Kevin going down and kind of talking to them and seeing how they can work with us. Because I also don't want this to cause the Hockomock League to say, you know what, it's not going to work for you. You can't be in our league.
It sounds like a pretty good response rate on the survey. Do you have any idea how much of that was our EL population?
I do not. We did have it in multiple languages. It was under 100. I think it was right around 50 in that responded in Portuguese, and probably 20 that responded in Spanish, but they might have responded in English too.
Sure. When do you envision we'd want to make a decision by in order to start to line it up?
Well, I'm not sure, honestly. I think the major hurdle is athletics. If we can figure out the athletic piece and have that all tied up, I think we can make it early by the fall. I would think that if we're going to make this change in 2021, we'd want to make a decision in the fall. However, the contract negotiation could really kind of hang this up too.
And that might be too aggressive, like, honestly, like, it seems like it's taking a long time to kind of go through this process, but we want to make sure that, like, at least a full, like, I almost think the fall might be too late to some degree, and maybe 2021 might be too aggressive, just because we want to give people at least a full year to kind of prepare things like childcare and, you know, all the schedules that are going to be impacted by it. So we've got to kind of weigh that out too. Is it worth moving a year from now, or is it worth waiting that extra year to give people that full year plus to really work it out? And like Craig said, we haven't kind of sat down with the union at this point to really kind of work the nuts and bolts, because we don't really have a proposal moving forward yet.
So, normally I listen to every recommendation that you guys make, and usually I'm 100% on board because I really value the work that you do and your expertise. But I do honestly have to say I have concerns. I have concerns about both proposals, and I guess part of my concern may be that, and I assume anyone who's hearing the same information, so we didn't have a lot of information, really we didn't have any information on the details of this before tonight, so it's a lot to process. So for example, it never would have occurred to me that we were going to ask parents to think about their children not starting a school day until 9:20. That feels really late to me to start a day. And I think when we think about working parents, which most of our parents are in this community, it's not always as simple as asking people to just kind of shift their work schedules, because a lot of people just have schedules that just can't be shifted. There's just no two ways about it. And I hear Dr. Perriello's, you know, all the things that he's shared and all the research that we've been talking about. And what I'm not clear about, and I guess I'd like a little more information about, when all this research has been done, has any of that been done on the modern teenager and the modern student who has access to all of these devices. And, you know, I look at my own house where I could do a much better job of policing what my kids are doing at night. But I know for sure that if we end the high school day at a later time, sports and et cetera start at a later time, they're up later, we're without real parent buy-in and pulling things out of their kids' hands, kids are going to end up, I guess, I'm just wondering about this, staying up later. And I don't know if there's any research
There
that,
is.
okay, so I guess what I would be interested in is a lot more hard data. I'd really like to see the results from the survey. So you kind of mentioned it's a mixed bag. I don't, without seeing it, you said you had a survey that you sent out.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means. So I guess if it's 50-50 and, you know, we have to talk about potentially leaving our athletic league, we have to talk about a big disruption to parents, or on the other hand, with proposal 2, talking about childcare that may not be available. I guess,
Yeah, so
I have concerns about
I'm not
that.
so worried about the athletic league piece, because I think there's a lot of ways we can kind of make that work. I am very concerned about, like, the work schedules and childcare and that impact. I think everything else that we are kind of, our purview, I think we can control and make adjustments. My
Right.
concern is families who can't make adjustments, or it's gonna result in a increased kind of cost that they'd have to bear for childcare. That's kind of my bigger concerns.
I totally agree with you, and I also think, you know, the part about athletics is, you know, as much as I value the athletics program in this district, and we always talk about student athletes, when you're a student on that athletic team, it's athletics and then it's school. And so an example of that is if you're traveling and you're down in Taunton or Attleboro or Canton, wherever they travel to, these kids are out late. And there are also athletics where kids are on a JV team that plays first, and they're mandated to stay for the varsity game. And even if there's an exception made, it doesn't look good. So I think and it doesn't feel good when you're the athlete and you're trying to say, oh, I have to go home and study for a test. And if we start pushing all that back, I do worry about our older students on the flip side of it. So I guess my hope would be that as we continue to move forward with this, we might have more opportunities, and maybe we've had them and I haven't paid enough attention. I apologize if that's the case, to like what is the compilation of the research really saying about the modern high school student, and what's the fallout from each of the different proposals, and what will that really look like in all areas, academics, work, childcare, parents getting to work, you know, and all those things, so we can have kind of that comprehensive look at all the information before we say, yeah, we really want to be a leader in a change, or, you know, for a 45-minute change in the morning, is all of that worth it? And I don't know the answer to that yet.
I
So,
agree. I don't either. I really don't.
Yeah.
I could tell you research. We've been over the research. We know that chemicals in young adolescents' brains make it difficult for them to fall asleep until 11 o'clock. We know that they need 8.5 to 9.5 hours. There is an article that I thought I had shared it with everyone. I guess I didn't.
No, you might.
There was a
have.
research article from, it was either last year or the year before, from a district in Colorado with 29,000 students. And they made the shift, and they did talk about one of the worries was that people had devices, or the kids were just going to stay up late. And all the research that we're looking at isn't suggesting that kids are staying up later. It's suggesting that kids are falling asleep around the same time, and in some cases earlier. And I think the reasons why they didn't say this specifically, but I think the reasons why kids fall asleep earlier is because all of this information now becomes important to people, and people are talking to their kids about it. So I think they put more kind of emphasis on it. But the research out of Colorado was showing, you know, kids are getting a half hour more sleep, or even 40 minutes more sleep, which may not seem like a lot, but it puts them over the edge. And you know, I know a lot of you have adolescents. It's very difficult to rouse them out of bed. And then when they're not getting enough sleep, this is another thing they talked about in the study, is this idea of a catch-up sleep on the weekends. And they sleep for, 12 hours at a time, or sometimes longer than that. They found that when they changed start times, the amount of times that students did that drastically decreased too, because it was more consistent throughout the week. I don't know. So I agree, there's a lot of changes that I don't know how we're gonna really figure it out until we actually do it.
So I know all the research says that, it's better in that 8:30 time slot, but did you look at another option that maybe was like an 8:15 or, or like an 8:20? Because even a shift,
Yeah.
like 10 minutes the other way makes Brookside or Memorial a little bit more, I guess, consistent with the time it's now.
We did talk about that, and I guess the feeling was, if this is what the experts are saying, and we know that any change, even 15, 20 minutes, is going to cause this disruption for people, why not go to just where they're recommending that you go? So that's why.
Any questions?
Just where do we go
Oh,
from
I'm
here? Right, so you presented a lot of information, Craig, which I think is helpful. To Jen's point, I think it's a huge, momentous decision, and so
Yep.
thinking about just kind of like, what are the next steps from this discussion?
I would think my opinion would throw it on a future agenda item, and then you said you still had data you were still trying to put together
Yep.
and everything. I think once we have all that data, I think that would be another discussion to have. In my opinion, I mean, that's the board of you guys want something different.
I mean, I'm happy to share the data with everyone. But I guess for us, there's not much more that the committee that I'm with can do. So I don't know if you want to make a broader committee that includes more school committee members and like a more formalized kind of a group. I don't know.
So, one thing I worry about, is a great question, is Boston was kind of a cautionary tale for the school start time. I don't know how many folks are on the table know the Boston story, but they were looking at this and doing a lot of what they determined was due diligence. And when the decision point came and it became real, there was kind of a revolt from families and on a lot of different levels. And I think whatever we do as a next step, we want to avoid like that piece of it, because I think that there's still a lot of questions out there.
Yeah.
I think Craig and the committee has done an incredible job of trying to reach out in a lot of different ways and put the information out there, but I think until something becomes potentially real and people say, oh my God, I'm gonna have to find childcare, oh my God, whatever the impact is on your life, so I don't have a good answer for you right now. I think we got to do some thinking before we come up with a next step. But I think that's my worry is, we're kind of at a stage where I think we're still at the do a little more work stage before we get to a point where we say we want to make a change and we don't want to make a change. Because I think, again, I don't know who asked the question about how many people in Spanish or Portuguese answered the question, but it seemed like it was a relatively small sample compared to, because how many people totally responded? Because it was a good response rate.
2,900.
So we only had, of the 2,900, 100 people who were doing it in a language other than English. So that's concerning. So I would say, I think it's worth the administrative team kind of huddling up, maybe bringing it back to the committee, either in April or May, and kind of saying, hey, this is kind of, then you'll have the data analyzed by then, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Maybe second meeting in April, first meeting in May. Think that's reasonable?
Yeah.
So we can bring a little more data and then maybe say, hey, based on kind of this and a little more thinking based on your initial feedback, this is how we'd like to proceed, and here's why.
Thanks.
I think that's a reasonable question.
But I also think we'll get, from our hundreds and thousands of viewers tonight, I think that we're gonna get some feedback, because now we're really putting some times
Absolutely.
out in the public, which we haven't done before.
Wasn't he saying nice things about Milford TV just a little bit ago, Rob?
That wasn't nice?
So that would be something we'll do. We'll throw it on It's gonna be on another agenda.
Yeah,
item,
so we'll
I
put it,
think,
we'll put it
so.
on an agenda item moving forward. I'm thinking, do you think May's more reasonable than April?
Yeah, I'm just thinking in my head what we already have on the agenda for April, and I think this is gonna be
This will be a long
quite
topic
lengthy.
too. All right, so-
However, in May, you also have the schools coming in to talk about their school improvement plans and their handbooks.
Yeah,
So those will be long meetings too.
we'll look at the agenda and come up with an
Okay,
appropriate
thank
date.
Yeah, and if I can just add, in no way was I suggesting that we make a committee bigger or add more school committee, and I don't want, absolutely I value and appreciate the work the committee has done. I think it's huge, and I think exactly to your point, seeing numbers and
Yep.
times and hearing that.
Makes it more real.
Yeah.
It does, it does. So I think probably more information, more conversations would definitely be helpful, so thank you.
And even with that, sorry, like, just add on, like, maybe when you talk about school start times, Craig, include the bus times. Because I'm thinking, like, if I leave for work at 9:20, I'm gonna get there at 11. Like, what would the bus route be for the corresponding
Yeah.
schools? Just to, like, include that as
Okay.
part of the process? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Well,
Okay.
it is part of the process, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Megan.
No, thank you.
But I will say that I think the committee, to kind of jump on what Jen just said, has done an incredible job really kind of looking at all aspects of this. And it just shows like what, you know, I think we run across this in the policy subcommittee all the time, which I think is a simple conversation.
Mhm.
Ends up taking somewhere between 3 and 6 months of like, you know, just digging into things and you just start looking at things from different angles. And I think this is a much more complex issue than it appears to be from first glance. You know, shifting things back a half an hour. Seems like a simple thing, but it's really, really not. So, we'll be back. More to come.
Thank you, Craig.
Oh,
What do you got?
I have the second part. I almost forgot. All right. First, we have 9 warrants for your approval in the amount of $714,387.47. I think we need to vote on that.
Motion to approve. Motion by Megan, seconded by Jen. All in favor?
You also have a gift.
Also, I have a gift this evening. This gift is from Harold and Marsha Rhodes, and the name of the gift is for Shining Star in the amount of $500. Can I get a motion to accept this gift? Motion by Chris, seconded by Laura. All in favor? Thank you very much. I think that's it for you.
That's it for me.
That's it for you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, subcommittee updates. I think the last one we had was a policy meeting.
Maybe just briefly on that,
Yep.
Roger, we did meet this evening, really nothing at this point to move forward for the full committee, but we talked about the turf field agreement as well as the public participation. It's school committee, no, that's not true, we skipped that. We went to Dr. Kelly first. A policy around parent and family engagement, for Title I. So sort of a working meeting, discussing both of those, but those will need to come back to policy before they come to this committee.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan.
Sure.
Next, school liaison updates. I did have one this evening. I was going to have, Ms. Shabbat was gonna come in this evening from Memorial. She was gonna talk about the sensory path. I'm not gonna steal her thunder. She couldn't make it tonight, so I will revisit that at our next meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
Just for Brookside. The popcorn pages and pajamas was last night at Brookside, so I was able to go with my family. There was a really good turnout. And I just want to thank Mrs. Rice and the Brookside PTO and all the teachers who volunteered their time, because that's a really nice event. And there was a lot of families there last night that were able to participate, so that was great. First and second grade math night is next week on Wednesday, April 3rd, and that's at the cafeteria at Brookside. And then Brookside's also doing a Hall of Flags. So this is kind of a new thing that they decided to do this year, the administration. So they're hanging the flags of all the countries that are represented by the students. So right now there's 13 flags right now hanging in the Brookside cafeteria. And they've ordered nameplates to identify all the flags so that the students can associate the countries with the flags. And they're actually going to have a big event to introduce the Hall of Flags to the Brookside families. So that's coming up. And so stay tuned for that date sometime this spring, hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes. All right, thank you, guys. Future agenda items.
I just had one request, when it came to me as we were kind of going through the budget process, and, we put a lot of focus on intervention and helping our struggling learners. I'd love to do something on sort of enrichment in the K-6 world, either things we're currently doing or potentially funds that we could be allocating for enrichment, particularly at that level, because once you get to, where your leveling classes are offering AP, just understanding what we do in the younger grades and what maybe we could think about doing. Thanks.
Old business?
Just one thing for the, we're gonna be sending out some invitations tomorrow from Melissa just to do just a budget meeting in the next week or so. So we'll be looking for what dates are available.
And there is no executive session this evening, so can I get a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Joe, you have to make it, don't you?
That was a quick hand, baby.
And again, before we wrap up, Joe, thank you very much for everything you've done for us, both in this committee and everything, and the community as well. And Rob, we're not leaving you out as well. Best of luck for everything you do, boss.
Thank you.
Thank you.